across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you, you gorgeous things, wonderful discerning audience of mine, or indeed of Kevin O'Sullivan's, because that is what you're normally here for, isn't it? But you have me instead. I don't know whether that's considered an upgrade or a big disappointment. Let's hope it's the former. But I'm pleased to be back, actually. It's a wonderful little show. I get to watch the sun dip over the yard arm in the comfort of this studio, wondering where my gin and tonic is. So if you're thinking that poor Alex is flagging a bit, just courier one over, would you? I'll get the producer Samara to run down to reception and pick it up for me. Stick a little cocktail umbrella in it while you're at it. But lots to talk about today. Things have moved on, haven't they, with the migrants from the Bell Hotel in Epping Forest, Gubaslassi Kabatu, who has now been found guilty of sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. He is going to be sentenced imminently. Suggestion is it will be a custodial sentence, which brings me on to wonder how many more will now follow. Is this just going to be a flash in the pan? It turns out that the mums and dads of that part of the country were well within their rights, weren't they, to be standing outside the hotel saying, we are worried for the safety of our women and our children. You know, just now, actually, I was commuting down on the train and got off the train at Paddington, was walking through, and a man started sort of, coming alongside me. You're very beautiful. Do you mind me saying that? You're very beautiful. I was like, oh, yeah. Thanks. All right. Cheers, lad. Thankfully, he kind of left me alone after that. And he did sort of say, do you mind me saying? Which is better than the reception you often get. But it is, in this day and age, they do try it on. I'll tell you that much. Talking about trying it on, we're going to be discussing the fact that Angela Rayner's lawyers have turned around and said, we didn't tell her that. Why should blame it on us? We didn't give her that advice about not paying stamp duty and this, that and the other. It's like, woman, just fess up. You were trying to pull a fast one and we've caught you out. But it's just the latest in a string of scandals that have besieged the Labour Party. And it's not, the thing that really annoys me about the blatant and lazy scandals of the Labour Party is that they don't even try very hard. It's not some sort of elaborate money in brown envelopes to hostile states or bunga parties. It's like pretending your phone got nicked when it didn't. Dodging paying a bit of stamp duty over here. Although the corruption minister and what's going on with her family in Bangladesh is a little bit more spicy. But by and large, it's just so low grade. If you're going to give us some scandal, at least make it tasty. Nigel Farage has been over in America doing a whistle-stop visit before he is back at the Reform Conference that begins tomorrow. And while he was over there, he was warning Americans that if they're not careful, they could go the same way as the UK following the arrest of Graham Linehan. He made a speech to Congress pointing out that whatever Sir Keir Starmer says about free speech in the United Kingdom, he's probably not being very truthful. Wouldn't be the first time the man told porky pies. And then the rather sensational story of a Labour council leader, Peterborough City Council, who referred to victims of grooming gangs as white trash. Now, I have seen the screenshots of the messages that he sent. They're pretty vile. And I sit there and I think, again, when it's the Labour Party, there's not even a bip on the newsometer. And I lived through the days where some man who was a Conservative parish councillor, who about 24 hours before decided he was going to defect to UKIP and hadn't even told UKIP, wrote a letter to the Henley Express or something, saying about the recent floods of God's punishment of gay marriage. And it was front page news everywhere. Because if Boris Johnson's got someone paying for himself some wallpaper, you better believe it, that is a sackable offence. His head should roll. They're all standing outside, braying like a bunch of banshees, aren't they? When are you going to resign? When are you going to resign? And yet you see that interview with Beth Rigby, whose hair is rivaling that mad Claudia Winkleman now. I'm surprised she can even open her eyes. Sitting there basically going, are you all right? Is it a bit hard for you? Yeah, is that really difficult? Yeah, is that difficult? Whereas if it was Boris Johnson, they'd be all wetting themselves, wouldn't they? It is two-tier journalism. So we're going to try and rectify that a little bit, aren't we? And be on the side of the right and the true, because that is what you tune in for. And to help me stay in my lane, although, you know, I might not always be right, but I'm never left. Let's be fair. Is that the wonderful Philip Kisserly, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. Or as you taught me how to say your name the other day, Philip Kisserly.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Alex.
Lovely to have you back. So let's start off with Epping. The Epping Hotel Migrant touching up them girls on a park bench. They weren't lying.
They were right. They were right. And this is a migrant who's been touching up 14-year-old girls. He told 2 other girls that he would like them to have his babies. These are children we're talking about here. He'd been in the country for, what, 2 days? I think it was something like that. But I think this is the thing, right? He probably doesn't understand what he's done wrong. Because where he comes from, that's de rigueur.
Well, yes, I know. I'm with you to some degree, but at the same time, apparently, where he comes from, he was a teacher.
He was a teacher.
So you kind of think you'd hope that he would look at 14-year-olds and think, especially in school uniforms, and think, well, probably shouldn't ask if they'll have my children.
No, you'd hope, but you'd hope in vain, Alex, I think, with that one, because I think that he doesn't know, you know, that he doesn't know he's done anything wrong. I think it's a massive cultural difference. I think the children are fair game as far as he's concerned. Like you just said when you came on the tube today, someone was telling you that you're not a child, obviously, but it's still the same thing. There are no boundaries here. There are no sexual boundaries because children and women are possessions. They're there to be bartered. They're there to be bought and sold.
I do think with this one, I think something that's missing here is, I think that Kibatu probably knew full well these girls were 14 and it was totally inappropriate to be targeting them. I don't think he's that stupid. Yes, he might be from Africa, but I don't think he's that stupid that he didn't recognise that these are children. And I don't know what the sort of, you know, average marriage age is over in, is he from Eritrea or Ethiopia? I think he's a Christian as well, actually, professes to be a Christian,
yeah.
which
so that
by and
does
large,
have an impact, yeah.
By and large, they don't tend to marry off their girls age 9, but not necessarily. But one thing I think that's being missed here is how many of these male migrants come over and think, in order to stay in the country, I need to get someone pregnant.
Yeah, I think that's a massive issue. But I think just to come back to you on that, yeah, you know, maybe you're right, and maybe he does know, and maybe he does understand, and he is a teacher, and he's obviously not stupid. But I think the individual case doesn't matter so much. I think the general principle of people coming over here from cultures where, as I say, women are just there to be bartered, just there to be used, sexual objects.
The Somalias, the Sudans,
that is
the
what we're
Iraqs,
dealing
the
with.
Afghanistans, the Syrias, where girls as young as 9 are basically flogged to be wives.
Yeah, exactly. And so the people of Epping are right here. This is the simple aspect of this story is they're right. They're absolutely correct to be concerned, and it's brilliant that they stood up to it. It's brilliant that they caused all this fuss, because now it kind of breaks a barrier in a way, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can all say now that we are all concerned because this is a test case, right? This is a test case, and we can go to all of these other places, all of these places we talked about last week, where I'm just outside Leeds. There are lots of these people here. There's a house near me. You were talking about Swindon just last week. We can go back there and we can say, look, we're frightened because there are issues here. These people do not know how to treat women and children, and we need to do something about it.
But also, they're young men that Kevin O'Sullivan always points out, young men of a sort of very sort of virile age.
Well, we call them men of fighting age, but they're men of sexually active
I would
age,
go as far as saying from some of these countries, these men are actually sex tourists. And I would say that quite resolutely, because I've done a deep dive into things like the TikTok videos that the traffickers are putting up to coax these men into using their services. And then the men themselves, there's one who's some sort of, you know, TikTok influencer, and they're always going down Bournemouth Beach, aren't they? Filming all the women in bikinis with their sort of like, you know, rap music and whatever, and sending it back at home and doing that thing they do with their fingers like this, and bragging to all of their mates back at home, look where I am, the women are in bikinis. Because of course that's titillating to somebody who has only ever seen the ankle of their mother when she happened to get out of bed too early in the morning before
This is like a virtual world of opportunity, sexual opportunity for them. And they are seeing women that they've never seen before, okay? The kinds of women that they've never seen before. And they are looking at these women and they are reading all the wrong signals. Okay, a woman is showing some leg, a woman is in a bikini, and they are just thinking that she is fair game. She is there to be used. And they come from cultures where they don't see women. They maybe see a bit of ankle, you know, and they
certainly
get
don't have a
extremely
sort of
worked up about
a convoluted system of etiquette about eye contact and duration of eye contact and approach and how you speak to them. I mean, because there's so many unwritten rules, even just in England alone. You know, as a woman, if you just go to Italy or something, it's a whole different ball game over there. You go to somewhere like Eritrea, and Lord knows what you're going to be faced with. I've got a question for you, because this is something that I've thought long myself. Two people, Adrian in Horsham and John in Lincolnshire, both basically asking the same thing. John says, this man from the hotel is guilty, but surely the government is liable too. They had no idea who he is or his background and housed him down the road from the school. If you have a dangerous dog and it gets out of your garden and it bites, the owner is prosecuted too. Adrian in Horsham, I have a question. Does Yvette Cooper and the government owe the victims of Epping a public apology for allowing this illegal migrants into the country to subject them to sexual assault? Now, we talked, didn't we, last time we were on together about Cologne, when there were over 1,250 sexual assaults and rapes in the main square. One night alone, New Year's Eve 2015, I think it was, which was basically the year that Angela Merkel had said, come one, come all. And they just went on a massive grope-a-thon. They did what they do in Egypt, I forget the name of the practice, where they basically form groups
around a woman.
Around a woman. There's always a protective force field around her, and they all grab at the clothes and grab at the body. And so she is sort of, it's almost like you have packs of wolves do it to a baby calf.
It's like hyenas,
separating it from the pack and making sure nobody else can see what's going on. And this happened en masse in Germany. And, you know, we know from that night and the statistics, which were covered up and suppressed for so long, and we were gaslit over that, and what has happened since, in the decade that's happened since, European governments have done this. It's all very well saying, oh, well, the men. I'm sorry, but if it's clear as day to me and clear as day to you that if you're bringing Iqbal or Sumail or something from a culture where women are in burqas, where girls can be married off at the age of 9, where polygamy is normal, where non-Muslim women are treated worse than dogs without any rights, and then you stick him in the middle of Britain with its sort of on steroids sexual liberty, which I would argue has gone a bit too far personally, what do they think is going to happen?
Well, we live in one of the most sophisticated cultures ever in the history of the world, and they are coming from honour-based tribal cultures. That's one thing. Just go back to the Germany thing. That's really important because you know they opened the doors in Europe, didn't they? Now it was a novelty for Germany to have people wanting to come into Germany after the Second World War and all of the repentance that they had to go through after that. So in a way you can understand that guilt. I'm not condoning it, but you can understand it. What you can't understand, Alex, is our guilt, because we have nothing to be guilty about. You know, the left would bunch us and the Nazis quite comfortably. They would bunch us together and say we have European guilt. No, we don't. We fought the Nazis. Okay, you know, but they won't have any of that. You know, then they will go back to the, you know, the colonies and the empire and all of that kind of thing. And it just makes you want to, oh no, I don't want anything to do with that. It's nonsense. What's happening here is people are just putting their collective foot down. They're saying we've had enough. You know, we're raising the flag. We are standing out. We are proud. We are saying to the government, no, you will not put our women and children in danger. You will not put our societies in danger. It's not just sex crimes, is it? It's Islamist bombings. It's the Manchester Arena. It's all of those things. It's London Bridge. It's all of those, you know, all of those attacks. It's the fact that we're under attack from all of these angles, and it's the sense that our culture is cited as being poisonous when it obviously isn't, and it's cited as being poisonous by poisonous cultures, by Islamism, by people who want to kill people if they are not religious fundamentalists.
And you know, one of the most dangerous aspects of all of this is, young people are being force-fed such a dangerous narrative that if they have any sort of spidey senses, any hair standing up on the backs of their necks, any sort of pattern seeking from statistics, and think, these people might be a danger to me, they're awful and they're racist. They're actively encouraged to go out of their way to beatify these newcomers. And I think that is for young girls especially, because young girls are so impressionable. Young girls want to be seen to be nice, and they want to be seen to be doing good. There's some young girls who phoned up the show a while ago and sort of said, oh, about this, and it was what we did in Iraq, and no, and that's why. And you could hear them say, why are you always associating immigration with sexual assaults when actually the majority of sexual assaults are carried out by white men? And I was sitting there listening to these girls going, you're the people more than anybody on this planet who need to get this and need to know that what you have just said to me is absolutely wrong, because you will be the victim. It is your personal safety. I'm not being a monster. I am not a racist. I've lived in Kenya and Ghana and India. I've worked in Nigeria, lived in China, worked in Pakistan, you name it, I've been there, right? I am far from a racist, but I've got some worldly experience.
No, what you are
and
is a realist.
I care about girls' safety.
Exactly.
And when they phoned me up, it broke my heart, because I thought, you are the people I'm trying to protect.
But the thing is, Alex, they've been fed this diet of suicidal empathy since they were in nappies, okay, and they go through school and they have to love refugees and they have to hate Brexit. And I know, because I've done lots of work in schools, I've done lots of work in FE, and I spent 25 years in HE, okay. It is just, the long march through the institutions, the far left, the Britain hatred, the decolonisation, all of that kind of thing. It is, to paraphrase Angela Rayner, it's one rule for us and one rule for them.
On that topic, right, we did a bit of a chew-over yesterday of the Fabian Society, which is a thread I've only just started to pull, and my
but
goodness,
in a way that's where it starts.
What a tapestry
that's where it starts.
Comes from. Yeah. So, I mean, because I was looking into this and looking at all the Labour Prime Ministers who have been Fabians, the fact that half the Cabinet are very prominent Fabians, not just that, you've got the Governor of the Bank of England, the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England. This stuff goes deep. And what those people actually profess to say that they're trying to do is create radical ends, global socialism, but by sort of pernicious gradual means. And when you start looking into this and you just look at what has happened, you look at Tony Blair and the mass migration and the Supreme Court and the ECHR and the creation of supranational entities and the erosion of the concept of the nation state and the doctrine of multiculturalism and Ed Balls giving the Bank of England independence and Andrew Bailey crashing the economy and blaming it on Liz Truss. And you kind of look at all of this and you think they're not even trying to hide it.
Oh no, they're not trying to hide it, but this has been going on for, you're right to cite the Fabians, and then post-war you get the first new left who are all Marxists, and then you get the counterculture in the 60s, and then you get the radical socialism in the 70s, the anti-Thatcherism in the 80s, then pop culture explodes with rave culture and occupying spaces in the 90s, and all of this stuff builds on itself, okay, but it's not just out in the culture. Importantly, it's right in the heart of the institutions.
That's what I'm saying. The Fabians are deliberately, basically creating apparatchiks and making sure those people are planted in media, in NGOs, in governments, in quangos, in academia, and it's a very sophisticated process. They're doing well.
They're doing
if only the
incredibly
right were as organised.
Well, we need to look at them. We need to look at them. This is the thing. But it's all of the issues come back to the same thing, don't they? So it was Me Too, okay, and then it was BLM, and then it was trans, and then it was green, and now it's Hamas, for God's sake.
Pick your victims, why don't you? Let's pull Hamas out the back.
But they all, they all support all of these things. They're all the same people, but it's all there in the institutions. The support is there from the institutions, and that's what's happening, and that's why our kids, they're doing these ridiculous degrees, these luxury belief degrees. They're very easy, it's almost a kind of an addition to their social lives, and so it isn't just about work, it isn't just about socialising, it's their whole concept, their whole being, and they live in these little bubbles, and my God, they're going to get a shock in 4 or 5 years' time when demographics really kick in even more than they're doing now, right? And I think that's the time bomb. Demographics is the time bomb.
Look at this, I've just glanced at my screen and Samara's put some breaking news on there.
Oh, hello.
2 bits of breaking news, not just one. two. Number one, the Home Office has been given permission to appeal against the High Court's ruling, allowing Palestine Action co-founder Huda Amori to proceed with a legal challenge against the government over the group's ban as a terror organisation. So they can now appeal against the ruling that he can proceed with a legal challenge. Still, it's our money being wasted on lawyers arguing the toss over this. So there you go. Leftist lawyers at it again. But this one, Nadine Dorries has come to reform.
Oh, wow.
Nadine Dorries has defected to Reform UK. Yeah.
The more people that defect to Reform, the better it is, because Reform are the only game in town, you know, and yes, they need help with policy. Yes, they need help with governance. They are all over the place, but the more of them there are, the better it will be. I'm absolutely delighted.
Yeah, well done, Nadine. Oh, there goes my pipe dream of being the next culture minister.
Oh, you'll be
She'll
there.
get a shoe in, won't she?
Yeah, I want education.
Do you want education?
I want to have 25 years. Come on.
We need to go and make our stand over in Birmingham and be like, right, come on, I've got plans. Right, anyway, there you go. 2 bits of breaking news for you. We're going to take a short break now, but when I come back, Philip and I are going to be ready and waiting to keep you entertained and informed.
Very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Migrant.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, Angela, turns out that all your excuses, all your finger pointing, all your deflections aren't really adding up. In fact, they're adding up about as well as the ledger under the control of Rachel Reeves right now, which seems to be the only person going out to bat in your defence, woefully. Because the conveyancing firm that handled the purchase of a £800,000 flat in Hove has insisted it's done nothing wrong and that they have been made scapegoats. Verico and Associates, which is just a nice little family-based company in Herne Bay in Kent, confirmed that it had advised her on the purchase of the flat, but the managing director told The Telegraph, "We acted for Ms Rayner when she purchased the flat. We did not and never have given tax or trust advice. It's something we always refer our clients to an account or tax expert for." So, Angela, mate, give up. You know, one thing you learn when you live at the seaside, as you now do, is when you keep digging the hole in the sand, it keeps falling back in on itself. So perhaps stop digging.
Well, I just like the... this is Joanne Verico, who's the managing director of this company, and she said, "We probably are being made scapegoats for all of this, and I've got the arrow stuck in my back to show it." Just wonderful, eh? This is the Deputy Prime Minister we're talking about here, okay? And she's lurching from one crisis after another. But this is... I'm sorry, but this is what you get when you promote a semi-literate buffoon to a proper, major public...
Deputy Prime Minister,
yeah,
the second biggest job in the land.
Yes, and she's got her eye on the prime. Or she had her eye on the biggest job in the land. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. How long do you give her?
Well, do you know what the thing is about this lot? They're so obstinate and they're so arrogant that I wouldn't be surprised if, it depends what old Magnus Opie, whatever he's called is, Magna Carta, whoever the ethics man is. He's got a great sounding name. Whatever he decides, because Sir Keir Starmer's doing his usual, "We will obey by the letter of the law." So basically, he's just, a delegated responsibility for the decision making to that guy. So let's see what he says. But it reminds me, we were saying earlier, weren't we, that before we come on to this story of the Peterborough councillor and the atrocious things that he has been writing, if anybody from Reform or the Conservatives so much as sneezes over a poodle, it's scandal and it's front page news. And I remember it wasn't that long ago that Donald Trump almost assassinated and Nigel Farage got on a plane to go over to America because they're good buddies. And I can't remember which bozo it was. I think it was one of those newsagents ones. I think it was old raggedy what's-her-face,
the sensible centrist.
Old Mateless. Who was sort of doing the whole, "What are you doing over here? You're always in America. Why aren't you in your constituency? People say they don't see you in Clacton. Why aren't you in your constituency?" And yet they're absolutely silent on the fact that Angela Rayner's like, "Yeah, my main home is down in Irv now." It's like, have you not looked at a map lately?
I keep wanting to do a Liam Gallagher-esque Angela Rayner kind of accent, but I won't do it today. Oh, I could do it for if it's called for, I'll do it later. I mean, the thing is with this, it's so small and paltry as well, isn't it? I mean, it's not.
I know, like just at least have a bunga party, get some good stuff in there. Bring back the tractor porn.
Well, with the Tories, they had tractor porn, but they also they were paying for moats around their castles.
Oh, that was
as well.
Great. Yeah, duck moats and things like that.
Duck moats and this is this, and it gets worse because she, allegedly she's taking money from a trust fund for a disabled son. But the point is, if they get rid of her, they're getting rid of someone who's evidently a liar and a cheat and God knows what else. If they keep her, they're keeping someone who's evidently a liar and a cheat and God knows what else. So they can't win. And the ridiculous thing about this government is they just back themselves into a corner time after time, and they cannot win.
Doing it?
They cannot win on any of these issues.
Should we have a little listen to them backing themselves into that corner? Let's have a bit of Schadenfreude and just run the lot of them. Let's do 4 in a row. Angela Rayner admits she didn't pay enough tax. Go on, Ange.
Took expert counsel advice on all of my affairs to ensure that everything was done proper, and that expert counsel said that the advice that I received was inaccurate because of the trust. I don't own the property, that is true. I only own one property that is mortgaged, like most people. But because of the nature of the trust that was set up by the court, that I would be liable to pay the additional stamp duty. As soon as I knew that that was the case, I have alerted and referred myself to the independent advisor on the ministerial code to ensure that they can look transparently at what's happened, and also contacted HMRC to say that there is additional tax owing on this and that I'm prepared to pay that and fully comply with the HMRC as well.
Oh, look at that intense grilling she got under pressure. She was absolutely being cross-examined and interrupted. That was a Jeremy Paxman-style beast of an interview Paul Rayner was subjected to there. Let's now listen to Bridget Phillipson trying to defend her.
Angela Rayner acted in good faith. She did believe that she had followed all of the rules. For the avoidance of any doubt, she sought fresh legal advice, which came back and concluded that there was additional stamp duty that was owed. She wasn't able to talk about that fully until a court order that was in place, particularly in relation to her family, had been lifted. But once that had happened, and once the fresh legal advice had been received, she made a full statement, she gave an interview on this, and she referred herself to the independent advisor on ministerial standards. I think that is the right process to follow. That work will now carry on, and it's for the independent advisor to do that work thoroughly.
Do you know what I heard there? Blah 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 blah, and the whole while I was looking at her thinking, I need a fringe, because apparently if you've got a fringe, you just get away with murder.
It's a bob, isn't it? You need a bob.
You need like you've got to get the mental illness fringe, and then off you go. Right, let's now listen to Starmer wading in and defending his Ange.
In relation to the Deputy Prime Minister, she has explained her personal circumstances in detail. She's gone over and above in setting out the details, including Mr. Speaker, yesterday afternoon, asking a court to lift a confidentiality order in relation to her own son. She has now referred herself to the independent advisor. That is the right thing to do. But I can be clear, I am very proud to sit alongside a Deputy Prime Minister who is building 1.5 million homes, who is bringing the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation, and who's come from a working class background to be Deputy Prime Minister of this country.
I don't care what background she's from. She's a scumbag. And also, how about you refer yourself to the ballot box at this point, Sir Keir Starmer, because that would be the right thing to do. Because after just 1 year, I'm afraid to say, however much you say she's done all these brilliant things for building houses, no, you haven't.
No, but no houses.
The workers' rights that's led to sort of mass closure of pubs and the destruction of the hospitality industry. I mean, come on.
I mean, you just watch that, and if you watch it without the sound, it's pure theatre, isn't it? The two women at the back there consoling each other, where the patriarch speaks for them. You know what I mean? It's everything they're not supposed to be.
Rachel Reeves has got permanent crying face now. Have you noticed that?
And they're both crying. They're both crying all the time, and that's we're women and we're crying on the one hand. On the next hand, we're feminists and we're Labour on the other. You can't be both. You're either one or the other. And if you're crying and you're removed from responsibility, we can't hold you to account because you'll burst into tears, then you shouldn't be in Parliament. I think it's as simple as that.
I'm a bit of a crier myself. So
well, I'm a bit of a crier myself, but I'm a middle-aged man.
It's something funny go on when you hit a certain point, and it's like, the RSPC. Do you know the one that gets me is that advert for the donkeys?
The donkeys, I was going to say.
That donkeys advert it's like torture. If I were to run those Hamas tunnels, I'd keep my hostages in front of a big screen just playing the donkey advert over and over and over.
Yeah, I don't care about the kids. It's the donkeys that count.
Yeah.
But it's all theatre, isn't it? And none of it has any relation to reality. They are just performing. They are absolutely the antithesis of what they purport to be. They're liars, they're cheats. They're not even very good at it. That's the problem. You see that and you think, oh my God, it's pathetic. They are awful. And Rayner, she's promoted way beyond her ability because she lives in this is what they all do. All of these identitarians, they live in these little silos where this is my identity. I'm working class with the right opinions, so you have to listen to me. If you're working class with the wrong opinions, then you're gammon and you're scum.
Scumbag. Yeah,
it's just as simple as that. Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. Right, let's take a short break now, but when we come back, let's wade right into the argument about free speech, which is what Nigel Farage has been doing, taking that bit of information, going to snitch on Keir over in America. I love it. He made a speech to Congress pointing out that people are getting chucked in prison, arrested at airport by armed police for, I don't know, saying something that other people don't agree with online. That is dystopian Britain. Let's talk about that after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right then, strap yourselves in because we're going to speak freely because we don't care. Go on, come feel my collar. Go, you just try. You nick me out of this building. You try and take me from the warm bosom of News UK and see how the Murdochs are going to react. I don't know. I shouldn't push my luck, should I? I just, I do think that I've got a degree of sort of, there's a degree of protection there. I don't think the government wants to sort of get on the wrong side of News Corps, but you never know. But Nigel Farage has been over in the United States, telling them that we've got a lot of problems with free speech in this country. Meanwhile, Britain's top cop, the Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley, has demanded a return to common sense policing. There's a lot of buck passing going on here. Who is behind the order to start arresting people for tweets? Yeah. And I'm not sure where the buck does stop.
Well, we've got an activist police force, so, when they start talking about common sense, they're talking drivel, basically. I was just thinking about this today and looking at my own Twitter feed and thinking about the things I've said in the press and in social media, and it's got me into trouble before. Okay, I was cancelled from my job in a university for speaking the truth, actually. But it isn't just about livelihood now. You're not just in danger of losing your livelihood. You're actually in danger of losing your liberty now. Okay, if you tweet something that they don't like or that some trans person takes objection to, okay, then you're in danger of losing your liberty. Now that narrative has moved on quite a lot. The window's shifted radically in the last 2 years?
Yeah. But where did this come from? How did this all happen? Because I mean, there are examples in other parts of Europe. I was doing a podcast for Brussels, publication in Brussels earlier today, and there was an example in Germany where someone called a politician a moron and was arrested. There was another case, and I believe that was Germany as well, where a woman called some migrant rapists names, and she was the one who got arrested. Yeah. So this isn't unique to Britain, but I do think that we are the vanguard. We are the worst of it by the looks of things. When did this begin? Because it now seems to have been something that has become expected or normalised, and I can't remember the first time that there was a sort of you're being arrested for hurty words. What was sort of ground zero? What was the first case?
I think it's when activism really went on steroids, and so I think this has been around for about 10 years, and I think it's when identity politics went mainstream, when identity politics went onto social media, okay, and everybody just went berserk with it. So this idea that part of my identity is sacrosanct, it's protected, and anything you do, right, for instance, I'm a man who likes to wear knickers and suspenders on the weekend, okay? Anything you do, I can go up and call you names and hit you and do whatever, but because I have this protected characteristic, because I'm allegedly vulnerable, then it's me the victim and not you. And I think that upside down world of identity politics has taken us here.
But it's for me, it's a very easy way to just nip this in the bud and get rid of it right now. And that would be if Sir Keir Starmer stood up and said, we're getting rid of the nonsense that is a non-crime hate incident. Because that's not a thing. No. It isn't a crime. No. Get rid of that. Frankly, throw away hate speech, because sticks and stones and all the rest of it, but he ain't going to do that. No. But he could turn around as Prime Minister, or Shabana Mahmood, or whatever she's called, Justice Minister, could say we're going to scrap the existence of non-crime hate incidents. It's wasting police time, and it has led to this sort of nonsense policing.
And it always makes them look stupid as well. I mean, if you think about the Alison Pearson case, for example, it's a really great example, isn't it, where they wade in, it was, God knows how many coppers invade her house, take her away, question her, and do all of that kind of thing, and they look absolutely stupid. We've got this thing with Graham Linehan,
do they not realise that they are working on behalf behalf of somebody who is vindictive and using the police to bully and intimidate somebody. The police allowing themselves to almost be employed for free by someone who's got a grudge or got beef with someone else. I'm sorry, but you're coppers. You're supposed to be independent of this. You wouldn't roll into the middle of a domestic and start beating up a wife on behalf of the husband. So why on earth, when whoever phones up and says, I've read this thing online, I don't like it, I don't feel safe, I feel offended, I want to report them to the police, do they not say, grow up? I'm afraid we're not here to sort of run round and say, they don't like you, we're going to take you to prison now. It's just...
No, but these are the same coppers that are dancing, that are festooned in pride flags. These are the same coppers that, big strapping 6-foot coppers who on certain days are wearing red stilettos. These are the same coppers who are posing with fetishists in gimp masks, you know what I mean? So there isn't a sense that they are the adults, that they are enforcing the law or they are preventing the crime, preventing crime. They are just there as part of a particular community, the right ideology, and they are completely divested of any power because they're within it. They're not stood outside it and looking on. Now, that is the really worrying thing as far as I'm concerned. It's all about ideology. It's all about this. Again, as I say, it's the long march through the institutions. And we had a few weeks ago, wasn't there? There was a, was it Birmingham? The Chief Constable of Birmingham is a ginger bloke, and he had a turban on, and he was talking about Sikhs and celebrating Sikh culture.
And he had a turban on.
And he had a turban on.
What have you done that for, son?
Because he's an idiot. You know, and this is what we've got, this sense of siloed identity politics, which has just taken we have a police service now, we don't have a police force, and you're absolutely right in saying that we need to transform it back into a force. They need to stand up and be counted rather than kowtowing to every bloke that wants to wear a pair of red stilettos.
I mean, what's interesting about Nigel Farage's intervention, just reading this actually, is the sort of the slapback from Sir Keir Starmer is that apparently Farage's written evidence to the inquiry over in America suggested that US enforced freedom of speech with diplomacy and trade. So suggesting, well, slap some tariffs on Britain unless Sir Keir Starmer gets a handle on this. And, you know, Sir Keir said at PMQs he had flown to America to badmouth and talk down our country and suggested the Americans impose sanctions on the UK, adding that you cannot get more unpatriotic than that. It's a disgrace. And Nigel hitting back saying that was a falsehood. But quite frankly, I think if he had gone to America and said, why don't you just level the threat against Starmer, it would have worked. Starmer with this sort of pouring up at Donald Trump's lapel, you know, da-da, here's an invitation. Actually, I think most of Britain, if Donald Trump turned around and said, we're going to impose 25% tariffs on you unless you get rid of non-crime hate incidents, would be like, well, get in. They would love it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm constantly feeling a sense of shame and ridicule when I think of our country on the world stage now. And it's because we've got this regime, it almost feels like they're an occupying regime, doesn't it? But we have this regime that's at the end of days. I mean, they've only been in power for a year, but it feels like it feels like the end of the Second World War, doesn't it? You know, it feels like the occupying powers in France are, on the run. They don't know what to do, so they're becoming authoritarian. They're making stupid judgments, and they're trying to kind of, victim blame people. And you see it all the time. So it's just been one catastrophe after another. And I've got friends friends in America who mail me constantly and say, I've just seen you doing this, or I've just seen you talking about what the hell is going on in your country. Never used to have that. Even with the Tories, we thought the Tories were so bad. Never used to have that.
But arguably, this nuttiness we actually imported from America.
We did, yeah.
Apparently at this Congress hearing, there's a particular Democrat, no, we don't know either, he's called Jamie Raskin, apparently he's clashed with Nigel before, who called him a Putin-loving free speech imposter and a fringe politician. Well, if you're going to stand up and start making accusations about something, you would think he has done his research. And fringe politician, when Reform is polling a third of the vote right now, and the Conservatives on 17 and Labour Party's on 19%, you'd think that he would actually do a little bit of research. But I do like Nigel's answer, because he said, you can say what you like, I don't care, because that's free speech. Exactly.
Well, I mean, Nigel can just bat that stuff away day after day and just make them look stupid. But what I really miss, actually, are grown-up politicians who are actually, you know, I was talking about Angela Rayner before and how she's just promoted way beyond her ability. I really miss sensible politicians who are actually clever, who should be there.
I miss conviction and backbone.
Exactly.
You know,
so
an adult
Margaret
in
Thatcher,
the room.
you know, well, just conviction politicians like Margaret Thatcher, but even politicians that I didn't like or I didn't agree with, but I respected them for their intellect. People like Michael Foot, for example.
Right.
Nothing that he says I agreed with, but my God, the man was eloquent. He could stand up to Enoch Powell. They could have a discussion. You know what I mean? Today,
this lot are so low grade, it's embarrassing. Let's look at a bit of statesmanship, shall we, and have a little look at Nigel Farage in Congress in America yesterday.
You can say what you like, I don't care, because that's what free speech is. And in a sense, this has all been going wrong now for a couple of decades. We've kind of forgotten the Voltairean principles that we'll fight and defend to the death your right to say something that we fundamentally disagree with. That is the absolute foundation, if you think about it, of free speech, of democracy, of living in freedom. It's kind of why we fought 2 world wars at massive, massive cost, to defend that very principle. You know, I come from the land of Magna Carta. I come from the land that gave us the Mother of Parliaments, and it doesn't give me any great joy to be sitting in America and describing the really awful authoritarian situation that we have now sunk into.
And that is exactly what a politician in this country should be doing. They should be assertive. They should be taking the fight to where it needs to be taken. They should be standing up for this country. The problem with the Tories, who are supposed to be the opposition, they're just twiddling their thumbs and putting out videos like they're in some sort of, I don't know, tech college doing an NVQ in media studies.
The thing is, Nigel Farage is a statesman. Whatever you think about him, and I'm a big fan, so, you know, he's a statesman. He's absolutely comfortable on the world stage, whereas, you know, Starmer is a joke. The Tories are just nowhere. I think of... so Robert Jenrick has come out today and said lots of stuff about immigration, lots of really sensible stuff, and actually outflanking Nigel on the right. But I think of Robert Jenrick, and I actually don't think of him as a Tory. I think of him as separate to the Tory party, and like, you know, the Robert Jenrick party. You know, we're talking about people defecting to reform. Robert, please go over. You know, I would really love to see him there.
This has always been my beef, actually, as someone, of course, I'm an independent journalist now, but as someone who was sort of in UKIP from 2007, you know, I've been on the front line, I've done my time, but back when, you know, the word Brexit didn't exist and just saying you wanted to leave the EU had you ostracised as a sort of BNP light and all the rest of it. Being a Brexit Party MEP, been there helping to establish reform, then moved back into journalism. And one thing that annoys me is when you get Conservatives who suddenly go, I still want to be a politician, and the party's clearly done for, so now I'm going to go. Yeah. More of them should have had the conviction to go earlier, when it was actually a sacrifice, when it was a brave thing to do, because that is conviction, not self-service. Listen, let's take another break now, because I got a treat for you guys when we come back. That's right. It is the utterances of a Peterborough City Council leader who has been suspended from the Labour Party. You will be incredulous at the things that have come out of his fingers as he typed away furiously one night on WhatsApp. That's after this.
good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Migrant.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So Peterborough City Council's Labour leader, Dennis Jones, has been suspended from the party. He's now stood down from his role after he referred to grooming gang victims as poor white trash from Rotherham in a message to another councillor. This happened on social media. There was an apparent exchange of messages between Peterborough City Councillor Daisy Blakemore-Creedon, who's an independent who had resigned from the Labour Party in May over bullying accusations. I think she'd been quite outspoken, actually, on things like women's safety. They had a sort of back and forth. She had messaged Councillor Jones and said, "I care about safety, and why should immigration put women's safety at risk?" He responded, "Oh, so white British cops effing poor white crash in Rotherham is okay, is it? Get an effing grip, Daisy. You were aiming for populist votes and attention, but forgive me, you were bright enough to know what you were doing, and politically I wish you no luck at all, but you know what you were setting." It just sounds like a really nasty, vile, bullying, spineless piece of work.
Absolutely, I couldn't have put it better myself. But I think he's representative of so many of that type. I think Labour Party activists and petty officials. He's the leader of the council, isn't he? So many of them. They hate us, right? They hate what they would call white trash, and to single out little girls who are being raped, targeted by Pakistani rape gangs. It's good to know when people hate you, because it explains why things happen, or why they let things happen.
If this was another political party, that would be news everywhere over the last couple of days. Instead, actually, of my eyes on the BBC, they were sort of moaning about how constipation among kids is at a 10-year high. So I came up with the brilliant campaign line of, well, we can sort of use an alternative word, make Britain crap again.
Yeah, keep Britain pooing.
Yeah, which is clearly what Starmer's doing anyway. But it does frustrate me that the Labour Party, the people in the legacy media, just give them a free pass all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with Angela Rayner today, the Daily Mirror has just kind of let them no pushback whatsoever, no criticism, and that's the problem. Okay, so people look at the legacy media, they look at the mainstream media, and they know they're being lied to. They know this is the media wing of the Labour Party. But this creature here, I mean, he's stepped down, he's resigned now, but he's still a councillor. He's still there. You know, if this were, as you say, if this were Reform, or especially if this were UKIP back in the day, they would be, you know, they would be hounded and flogged and got publicly put in the stocks, wouldn't they? You know. Yeah. But because it's the Labour Party, they get away with everything. And I think that's the key thing. I think you've put your finger on it there. They get away with everything, and if it's like Angela Rayner, you know, if she'll probably get away with all of this, and it just makes people so demoralised. It makes people so angry, and that's why we're here.
Talking about people getting away with things, our little mate from Epping Forest, who sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl, is due to be sentenced, having been found guilty. But this one, Moffat conophilia, that sounds like some sort of Greek love of something you probably shouldn't be a fan of, who apparently is a former footballer, has avoided jail after forcibly kissing a 17-year-old on the lips. He's now turned around and thanked Britain for looking after him. He was living on the Bibby Stockholm barge. endorse it when he followed a girl to the beach and was trying to kiss her on the lips, saying he'd never been so close to a white woman. First of all, he was a striker for the Solomon Islands national football team and was responsible for the Academy of Young Footballers. You're not an asylum seeker, mate. You're someone who's taken the absolute proverbial. You've probably come over here to play a football match and disappeared into the system. And like I said, these people are sex tourists. They fetishise white women. They do. And I'm sorry, there's going to be a load of people out there who hear me say that that's disgusting, that's white privilege. She would say that. No, 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 black is beautiful. I'm sorry.
No.
But, you know, I've lived in Africa, OK? You know, you go over to West Africa and a lot of the young Africans in places like Gambia, Gabon, Ghana, see a white woman, a much older woman, as a ticket to get money and get out of the country. You go to Kenya, where I used to live, and it's kind of the opposite way around. The Kenyan women, who are beautiful, by the way, can't get enough of the fat old balding man who's over there on business. But, it's a thing.
Myself.
There is a fetishisation.
Yeah. I think that type of person, the Labour activist, the chattering class, the identitarians will say that, but the majority of English people will not say that. There was a poll came out today. Do you remember last week we were talking about put the illegal immigrants in kind of refugee camps? In camps. Right. 52% of the British population want them to be pretty much in prison conditions, okay, with barbed wire and guns. That's what they want. So we are sick of this because it isn't just one person, or it isn't just people who...
The majority,
it's all of these people.
Philip, that's time for top of the hour, and I think it's the end of your time here with me. I'm going to miss you. I love your company.
I love yours too.
Stay longer if you want. I'm always happy to keep a hostage or two. Anyway, Philip gets to go because I'm sure he wants to go for supper, but you don't, because you can eat your food and carry on listening. So go and get your knife and fork, but turn the volume up. I'm back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, how's your supper? Oh, did she overcook it again? Look, it's not her fault. She was distracted, she was listening to me, she was shouting at the radio. She's really annoyed with the state of the country, so cut her some slack. Oh, it's nice. Oh, sorry, yeah, well, you know, she is a bit of a consummate cook, isn't she? Right, anyway, welcome back to the show. All this talk of food and drink, I just messaged Samara saying, can we go out for a bevy afterwards? Because I need to take the edge off. And I don't know why I don't have a gin in a tin in this mug, but I am going to get a hot chocolate to keep myself going. But anyway, thank you for joining me tonight. I've had so much fun doing this shift. It's a glorious shift indeed. Makes you go a little bit wild. You know, the sun's over the yard arm and you kind of think, well, let it all hang out. Doesn't matter now, does it? All those Ofcom lots are probably in their, you know, slippers, drinking their cocoa and, I don't know, reading the latest Colleen Hoover novel, not listening to this. So we'll just do what we like, shall we? Let's talk now about the fact that today the Epping hotel migrant who was accused of assaulting a 14-year-old girl has been found guilty. Hadush Gebrselassie Kabatu, 38 years old, assaulted the teenager and another woman in public mere days after arriving in the UK on a small boat. All of those histrionics, the crying, the falling to his knees, but I'm not a monster, I'm not a beast, I knew they're children, I'd never... Oh, shut up! You knew what you were doing. And you know what? I think that I think that he was probably deliberately targeting these young girls in order to try and rope one of them into a relationship with him as a passport to stay here. I don't know, don't have evidence for that, but I'd imagine that was a pretty decent motivation. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. So he is about to be expediently sentenced, and we understand it could well be a custodial sentence. Is that normal? Will it be one of those ones suspended? Can we deport him? How long is he going to serve for? Let's speak to a barrister who may have the answer to some of those questions. It's the brilliant, the patriotic, the erudite and ever well-read Francis Hall. Good evening, Francis. Great to have you on the programme.
Evening, Alex. Thank you.
With this particular case, I would imagine, I mean, in fact, I was just reading a case of a footballer from the Solomon Islands who had forcibly kissed a 17-year-old on the lips, who avoided jail, who was living on the Bibby Stockholm. But now our good mate Hadush is going to face sentencing shortly. What do we imagine may be his fate?
Well, the district judge who convicted him, because it was in a magistrate's court, and that immediately indicates that the court will have decided that it was likely to get a sentence of less than a year. But the district judge, i.e. what used to be called a very long time ago stipendiary magistrate, decided that he was guilty in half an hour, and then it told him that although he was adjourning the matter, he could expect an immediate custodial sentence, which means a sentence that's not suspended.
I mean, what do you think's actually then going to happen then? Are they using him essentially as a sort of pin-up, for want of a better phrase, as a deterrent to other people, as a landmark case, so to speak, to show people who are living in these hotels, have come to the country, you cannot behave like this? Because I thought the direction of travel from this government is if you're likely to receive a sentence that's less than a year, we just won't send you to prison.
Well, that's a separate issue altogether, and an interesting and an important discussion. But this will have been a complaint by a young woman or girl, and that led to the police, not the government, taking action against this man. And then he was prosecuted and will be sentenced, having been convicted in the usual way. So I don't think we can deduce anything more from it than that. But just going to the question of deportation, if he receives a sentence of over a year, or a year or more, which is a sentence, as I understand it, the district judge cannot give, he could send it up to the Crown Court, and a circuit judge could give a sentence of a year or more. If he was to do that, there would be an automatic deportation, although that has considerable caveats. If he gives a sentence of imprisonment, the judge has the right to recommend deportation. Now, the important caveat to the deportation is he can argue that it would breach his convention rights. That's rights under the European Convention of Human Rights, which aren't limited to the right to life and the right to prevention of torture, but can include a private and family life. Although it sounds like in this case he's only just come here, so it's very unlikely he would have any Article 8 rights. So he would be limited to arguing, realistically probably, limited to arguing that he would face cruel or inhuman punishment or treatment or a risk to his life, which is pretty unlikely in Ethiopia, although one can't judge what he might or might not say.
I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? My suspicion is that he'll probably do a couple of weeks in prison maybe and be back in that hotel or back in another hotel, moved for his own safety, and will disappear into the weeds, and we'll all be encouraged to move on and forget it ever happened.
Well, if he's imprisoned and there's a deportation application, he could be in custody facing deportation. So he's not necessarily going to be released. But if he is deported and he raises human rights objections to that will have to go to a tribunal hearing. In the first tier tribunal, he'd have a right of appeal against that. So that could take some time. But he could be in prison or in prison initially and then in immigration detention after that. It rather depends on the decisions of the court as to whether or not they granted bail, for example, after he is released from prison, if that is what happens, and obviously we won't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, actually. Germany, I think it's Germany, have turned around and said, right, if you're being deported, you don't get access to lawyers and you can't keep rolling the dice and appealing the decisions made against you. Why is it in the United Kingdom that I read stories of people who have faced deportation and they've appealed not once, but up to 4 times?
Yes, perhaps because they've had different deportation decisions. I don't know the particular facts of that. Germany might have said that, but of course Germany is also subject to the convention and could also have appeals. Those matters are obviously much more important where somebody is in genuine threat of their life or of being tortured, which can sometimes happen. As I say, in this case, he's from Ethiopia. It's difficult to see what... I mean, it is possible. People do raise asylum objections to being returned to Ethiopia, particularly if they're from minority groups, and it's possible he claims that. Again, we don't know, but that's the situation. He's got those rights.
I mean, look, I'm no expert of Ethiopian culture, but judging by his name, as someone who's lived in East Africa, Gebre Selassie is a pretty popular name over in those parts of Ethiopia.
He doesn't sound like he comes from an Ethiopian minority.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't sound like he's a niche one. Now, as I've got a barrister on the programme, who better to ask about a couple of things? Let's start off with Angela Rayner and how much trouble she is in. Her lawyers have turned around and said, we never gave her tax advice. She's thrown us under the bus. This isn't our fault. Now, I've had a message from a listener who says that he's a property solicitor. He's worked in the city and US firms, regional and high street ones, etc. And said in all these environments and many others, the money laundering regulations apply. Everybody knows about additional duties on regulated solicitors providing services and advice to politically exposed persons. You don't get much more pep than Angela. And he says he feels sorry for the firm, but they should have declined to act if they weren't up to all the attendance requirements. So Dom in North Yorkshire actually thinks that the solicitor saying, it's not us, we've been made scapegoats, isn't necessary. You know, are they trying to sort of now wriggle out of something that should have been their responsibility?
Well, I think you've got to be very careful. First of all, this is a conveyancing firm, as I understand it, and a conveyancing firm is not necessarily holding themselves out as giving trusts advice, certainly not trusts advice, and probably not necessarily liability for stamp duty, although that's more questionable. They've made a statement, that's what they say. They are limited in what they can say because they're subject to legal professional privilege, but they've said that they gave the advice that they were asked to do. It's a very short statement. I have actually seen that statement. It's a very short statement.
Yeah, essentially what they've said is I mean, they actually admit that we are a small firm and this was above our pay grade. We're not qualified to give advice on trust and tax matters, and we advise clients to seek expert advice on these. So she's pointed a finger at lawyers, and clearly they at some point must have said to her, that's not what we're being engaged to deal with.
That's what they say. They said to her, yes, exactly.
Yeah. So how much trouble do you think that she's in? You know, I mean, she says I've done everything in accordance with the law. I always think with these matters, when it comes to politicians, it's about the spirit and the optics of something, as opposed to whether something was, you know, crossing T's and dotting I's. But do you, as a barrister, when you look at this tangled situation, see that there's grounds for an accusation of impropriety?
if she made false statements about her tax affairs, and I say if, and she denies any wrongdoing, and I think she denies, I think she may accept now that she made a mistake, but obviously she denies anything else, and that's important to make clear. If she was found ultimately to have said something that was dishonest, she could potentially be guilty of tax evasion rather than avoidance. But that's not her case, obviously. However, she seems to admit an error. She admits that she has brought this house with trust money, as I understand it, and trust money that was obtained for her son. And as I understand it, she's put the other property in her name. It may be, she says, that the equivalent value has been used. I don't know exactly. Clearly, whether or not she's committed a criminal offence is not the barrier to becoming a Secretary of State, and higher standards of probity must apply, particularly where somebody holds themselves out as saying that you should not try to even avoid your tax, let alone evade it, and has made all sorts of comments like that in the past. So there is that element of hypocrisy. I appreciate that there is a backstory, a very tragic backstory with her son's situation, but that doesn't in and of itself give somebody carte blanche to act improperly, if that is what she's done. And obviously that will be a judgment for other people, including in the political domain, and probably including her boss, ultimately the Prime Minister.
Now let's talk about judgments for other people. The buck is being passed when it comes to the case of Graham Linehan. 5 armed cops turning up when he gets off a flight and dragging him in based upon a tweet he put out in April. The Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, has called for an immediate change in the law and insisted successive governments were to blame, that it's not the police, they're just doing essentially what the law asks them to do. How much do you believe that that is the case? And also, when he talks about changing the law, where should we be looking?
I think that's a very surprising thing for Sir Mark to have said, I have to say, in that, first of all, police officers have discretion as to whether or not to arrest somebody. Secondly, this tweet was some months before and no action was taken. It cannot, on any view, have been remotely proportionate to use 5 officers, let alone armed officers, to arrest him. I very much doubt whether, even if it was justifiable to arrest him, which I don't think it remotely was, but even if it was, whether it would be proportionate to arrest him at all. You do not need to arrest somebody to start a criminal accusation. You can send them, you can ask to start proceedings in the magistrate's court. So it's wholly unnecessary to arrest somebody, and the law requires you to have a justification for arrest, and that's why he has said he is considering suing the Metropolitan Police for unlawful arrest. He'd have a good prospect, in my opinion, of succeeding in that, although obviously we'll need to see. But no, this doesn't need a change in the law. Indeed, the whole point of this arrest is that he is supposed to have incited violence. Now, incitement to violence, or the new form of that offence, which is since 2014 when the law was slightly changed, after that I stopped practicing in criminal law, hence I'm not completely on top of that. But after that is always going to be an offence, and it is not suggested that this is. As far as I understand, it's not suggested that this is a criminal offence because it's some form of modern hate crime. It isn't. It's supposed to be an offence of incitement to violence, because he talked about punching somebody in the balls, as I understand it in that tweet. But that is in itself subject to what's called Article 5 of the same convention, which is the right to Article 10 of the same convention, which is the right to freedom of speech and freedom of expression, which all courts and police authorities and police forces have to abide by. So when you decide whether or not to prosecute or arrest somebody for a tweet, you not only have to decide whether or not something is potentially an offence, but whether it's proportionate to take action, including by arresting them. freedom when that is the expression of a political view, which clearly it was in this case. So no, there is not a need to change the law. If anything, although I'm very sympathetic to the suggestion that we should change the law to reverse much of the online safety bill, not the part that the government latches on about pornography necessarily, but the part that affects freedom of expression, which is, of course, it's actually a conservative bill. And then act, but Labour has been heavily supportive of it since, and of course could change elements of it or all of it. But as for whether or not the law needs to change before 5 armed police officers have to somehow arrest somebody when they arrive in the United Kingdom on a plane, well, that's nonsense, frankly.
Brilliant. It's just so good to have an actual barrister giving us the T's crossed and the I's dotted on the lot of it. Francis, keep up your good work. Francis has always been a huge proponent of Brexit. He's part of the sort of inner cabal of sensible right-wingers, star chamber of legal expertise. We love him and we appreciate him. Let's take a short break now, shall we? And when we come back, I'd love to hear from you lot. So if you haven't dialed up to register your interest already, now is the opportunity to do so. And if you've never called the show before, why not make it your first time? Always a first time for everything, isn't there? 0344 499 1000. It's your normal network rate. I don't bite, certainly not from this distance anyway. You can also send me a WhatsApp message on that number or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp 0344 499 1000. If you'd rather send me a little texticle, you can do that 8722. Remember to write the word talk before you write out your message. And I'll be reading your messages and chatting to some of you lot after this.
Very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Migrant.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back and welcome on board HMS. Two fingers up at the government. We don't care, we're British. Norman, who's in Dartford. Hello there, Norm.
Hello. Thanks, Alex. Good evening.
Good evening.
The Angela Rayner business.
Yeah.
Now, she's a housing minister.
I know.
She would have had access to some of the finest legal advice this country has to offer.
Mm.
And she doesn't use them. Why not?
Well, also, as housing minister, she should be across her brief. You know, you wouldn't expect to go to the top heart surgeon in the country and they say, yeah, I don't actually know how the aortic valve works. And I'm not saying that, ministers of state need to know every single little bit of legislation, because most people aren't, wired up like Napoleon Dynamite. But there is a good argument that actually, if you're going to know something, it should be this.
Yeah, but I mean, she could have got the advice the best that countries has to offer. But she couldn't have gone to them, because surely they wouldn't give her the wrong advice. I don't know the solicitors, whoever they were that did, or she says they did, but it just doesn't stack up at all.
No, a lot doesn't stack up. And like I said, the thing that actually sticks in my craw, which no one's really talking about, is the sheer audacity as Deputy Prime Minister, not just some sort of rando backbencher, but Deputy Prime Minister, to move out of your constituency to another part of the country hundreds of miles away. Could you imagine, during the tenure of the Conservative Party, if Dominic Raab had decided he'd much rather live in the Highlands of Scotland and bought a house up there? There'd be furore. And nobody's pointing out that you can't really be serving your constituency if you've legged it to the other side of the nation.
God, I mean, the whole business is beyond belief, really. I mean, none of it adds up to any one normal person. But the fact she's now claiming that she had poor legal advice is just beyond the pale. I can't understand people even listening to it.
Mm.
Because she could just pick up the phone and speak to someone immediately.
No,
bloody Minister for Housing.
And it's weird now that she's saying, well, these people told me to do that, and they said, no, we didn't. So who is it? If you don't, is she just chaotic and disorganised? Is this so convoluted? She's just trying to tie everybody up in loopholes to avoid paying this tax. I mean, we're going to have to wait, I suppose, on what the sort of ethics watchdog decides to say on this. Apparently, they're going to decide quite quickly. I think Starmer wants this dealt with ahead of the weekend. So I think tomorrow we might even get a conclusion from him about whether she has breached ministerial code. But either way, the optics just aren't good. I think she should go.
Well, without a doubt. But what got my craw the other day with Starmer in Parliament, he placed the disabled son card, and then he placed the working class woman card.
Oh, I know.
I mean, God Almighty.
I know. It's as if, right, they treat Angela Rayner as a working class woman as if there's only one working class woman left on this planet, when actually the working classes still make the backbone of this society. There's millions of them, and most of this lot on the Labour benches are happy to point the finger and call them racists and Karens.
Of course I would. But, I mean, you can imagine if it was a working class Tory woman, he'd throw the book at her.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah, but there you go. Two-tier here all over again. Norman, thank you ever so much for your call. Let's speak to the wonderful Laura Jane, who's in Hampshire. Hi, Laura Jane.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, my darling. How are you on this fine evening?
I'm okay. It's been a bit wet in our part of the world, but anyway.
Well, it's been a dry summer. It'll make your marrows grow bigger.
Angela Rayner. I think we all know that it all smells too fishy, but I don't think Starmer's going to get rid of her in the traditional sense. I think he might take away her housing ministry, but he can't take away her being deputy prime minister. One, it's because you get voted into that position by her fellow Labour grandees, and also the left of the left ain't going to want to get rid of her.
I have a feeling, my gut instinct on this is that the ministerial watchdog will probably decide she hasn't necessarily broken ministerial code, and that I think she'll stay in position. A lot of other people think I'm completely the opposite to me, and I live to be proven wrong. But I have a feeling she'll just survive this.
Yeah, I think she's a survivor, and even if he sort of makes it look like he's giving her a tap on the wrist, but it doesn't actually happen, I think he's going to wiggle out of it, and I think she's going to wriggle free. The left want her, when they eventually do get rid of Starmer, which is inevitable, I think the left want her in power to finish off the...
Well, do you know, I kind of think that that's now unlikely. I do think that her chances of ever being in number 10 Downing Street are minimised, but she still is the Deputy Prime Minister of this nation. I think she should probably be made to step down from that position. But yeah, like you said, it will come to a vote. And, well, how many more scandals could they afford to have? But like we've been saying during the course of the show, is they're just not held to the same levels of accountability as the right wing. They're just not.
By the way, the Fabian Society, which has been around since 1884, is a pretty, they're in favour of eugenics and the most awful things, but a lot of that is being brought in. I mean, obviously it's not called eugenics, but there is a very nasty smell to them as well. I mean, they have some pretty awful ideas.
There really is. I mean, look, lots of people have been messaging me about the Fabian Society. We did a big interview about it yesterday. It's been running riot on YouTube. Everyone's been quite fascinated by it, as I am myself, which is why I initially wrote a Substack investigation into this, which anyone who wants to read it is more than welcome to go onto my Substack and sign up, where I do my bits of exclusive journalism. But it's definitely, I mean, they're there in plain sight. You can go onto their website, you can look through their policy papers, you can see where their members are scattered around in positions of power and influence, and you can actually see the legislation they've put in place with successive Labour governments to start to dismantle the concept of the nation state. It is not a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. It is there. You can see it.
Well, and it's not tin hat, but it is a conspiracy. They want to dismantle everything about Britain that's great. They really do, and this is part of their plan, and also part of their plan to make us notice them now, because anything that's in plain sight supposedly isn't dangerous. That's how they work. If it's not in plain sight, if it's in plain sight, it's because they're telling us something. Look at us. There's more to it than meets the eye, Alex.
I think you're right, Laura Jane. Always great chatting to you, my darling. Let's do some messages before we go to the break. Someone said if Nadine has been announced this evening, that could mean there's a bigger name to announce tomorrow. Could that be Jacob Rees-Mogg? Who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Although I've always got the impression with Jacob, look, I know that, Nigel and Jacob both work at GB News together. They've known each other for a long time. Leave Means Leave, that I was a big part of, and, the sort of cohorts of Brexiteers who weren't going to give up the fight. They've got a strong admiration for each other and always have done. But when it comes to Jacob's loyalty to the Conservative Party, he has always been adamant that he would never leave it. He's one of those stick in the mud, goes to all of the fetes and the raffles and, the branch meetings, and takes this stuff very seriously. But you never know. He's definitely invited to conference. I think he's doing something there. But I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this, actually, in terms of Conservatives defecting to Reform. Are you a Reform backer? Do you welcome former Conservatives coming over to Reform UK? Or do you think, actually, come on now, Reform is its own party, it's doing exceedingly well in the polls, it can get a whole new, fresh group of people to go and become MPs and ministers? Yes, you might want a bit of experience there, but is there a point at which you go, hold on, this isn't supposed to be the sort of survival mission for people who have already sat in government and didn't have the guts to defect when it really would have been taking a stand? Or do you say, no, actually, political experience, particularly ministerial experience, is a blimmin' good thing, and Reform should give themselves a pat on the back, because when we get high-profile defections like that happening to such a brand new party, it shows that that party means business. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'd be really interested to learn. 03444 99 1000. Do let me know by WhatsApp, voice note or message. 8722 if you want to text me your thoughts. And when I do calls a bit later, which will be the last sort of 45 minutes of the show, if you want to call me up and talk to me about that, then that would be fantastic. Who would be your dream Reform cabinet? Which Tories would you like to nick? Is there anyone from Labour you'd like to see joining the turquoise mob? Or do you think that actually, no, enough is enough? If you're going to be a fresh force in politics, you shouldn't be taking in waifs and strays who've been in politics for other parties already. It would be brilliant to know what you guys think about all of this. And when I'm over at conference, I'll tell them. OK, right. Let us take a short break now, because after the break, one of my favourite women on the planet is going to be joining me. It's Kelly J. Keane, leader of the Party of Women. So don't go anywhere. She's a fiery one, she is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, do you know what? When we have these skilled workers visas in Britain, because, you know, oh, bash your pounds, immigrants prop up the NHS, if it weren't for these people in the developing world, your nan would be dead by now, and all the rest of that stuff that we're constantly told. And yes, there are a lot of brilliant, skilled foreign workers in the NHS. I'm not denying it, but then there's plenty of people who are unskilled who come over and use it and are a burden on the NHS. But don't you worry about that, because back under Boris Johnson, he came out with the skilled worker visa after Brexit. These are people we need in certain sectors. And then, of course, he's kept meddling around with the amount that you had to earn to be let in, brought the threshold down really low, and then, oh, look at that, immigration became like gazillions every year. But when you think of these necessary skills that we need in Britain, one thing that we don't seem to be short of, if you're judged by a night out in Soho or going to some sort of trans activist anti-turf parade, is we don't seem to be too short on drag queens. In fact, we seem to have a heck of a lot of trans people in this country. I didn't really realise that being trans was some sort of necessary life skill, but apparently it is. Because a transgender drag queen who came to Britain on a global talent visa is so underemployed with her niche abilities well, I should say he, frankly, or it, is now listed on an escorts website in London. So there you go. Be a hooker, get a skilled worker visa, although you probably don't have to. I'm sure an Albanian criminal will happily traffic you over for free. Let's speak now to Kelly J. Keane, leader of the Party of Women. This just makes a mockery out of everything in Britain, doesn't it? I mean, it makes a mockery that we're considering some sort of drag queen who was able to bring 1,000 family members over on a global talent visa, and it makes an even bigger mockery that now on an escort website, which, as far as I'm concerned, is criminal behaviour.
Yeah, I mean, look, I saw the man. I thought more Mondeo than escort to be. But it's can you imagine being someone that uses an escort site? I mean, what sort of niche market would you have to be involved in to ask young Derek to come and be your escort for the night? And with the broader, maybe more serious point is, how is drag at all on any list of things that we need in this country? I mean, aside from filling BBC stories, because about 50% of the BBC website is devoted to drag queens and what they think about all sorts of things.
Oh, yeah, cost of living, according to someone who wears pantyhose over their gonads.
It's so weird. Like it's become like a bit of a joke that every time there's a big issue, it's like, oh well, how will drag queens cope in the heat wave? Probably makeup melting off, I would imagine, and very, very, very hot tuck. But yeah, it's insane. We don't really need anybody entertaining us from anywhere else. We've got quite a lot of people that can't find jobs in the entertainment industry, and also I think the more people we bring over for frivolous, silly jobs, it just opens the door to so many other people coming in, and maybe we should just train our own, not as drag queens.
But I kind of feel like, if I went to a country on a visa and then they found me prostituting myself online, they'd probably go, that breaks the condition of you being in this country. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Well, look, we obviously have people in power who don't have a particularly dim view of escorts. Like, that's the only... Eventually, it just comes down to that. Who's making the decision that this person can stay, and should we check their hard drive?
Well, I think that's always a good place to begin. I've got to ask while you're on, Kelly, about the arrest of Graham Linehan and the fact that, what he might have said, some people might think is strong. I don't. I think if a man comes into a women's changing rooms, then you're quite right to suggest that they should be punched in the balls. But when you look, what angers me about this is when you look at what the other side say, and I've seen the things that's happened to you in Britain and around the world, physical violence, death threats. I was looking down a sort of post on X earlier, and it's sort of, what is it, change your heart or die or something, is something that they like to put out on their lines, or this anti-turf lot, or I shoot turfs for fun, or punch a turf in the throat. The other side always use violence in their tactics. They always use threats of rape. They always use extreme misogyny. They always use actual physical intimidation, and nothing ever happens to them.
No, and I don't know if you're aware of this, Alex, but in 2023 there was a Trans Day of Visibility, or Trans Remembrance, or Trans Every Tuesday. It was an event with the Met Police being trained, and the whole room was encouraged to boo and hiss when my name was read out. So I think we know where the law is and how it views harm to women in comparison to the hurt feelings of fetishists. And fortunately, women don't do so well with the police.
But this is the thing, still, we're not talking about this in society. We all know it. If we're of sound mind and we got eyes and we got ears, there's a Venn diagram when it comes to men who want to put on a little girl's frock, and fetish and perversion, and I'm gonna say it, dysphorias and mental illness. These aren't, it's not normal to be a grown-up man wanting to wear a thong and go and sit and listen to women pee. And on that subject, there's a very strange Venn diagram, isn't there, between this trans mob and people who want to use urine and urination as part of their protest.
Yeah, oh, they're so delightful. I mean, what woman hasn't decided to urinate in a bottle as a way of protest, aside from No woman has ever done that. I mean, they couldn't be more overtly male if they tried. And I really want to make it clear, bad men are rare, but men that want to go into women-only spaces are bad men. Yeah. And I don't mean maybe some of them. I mean every single one of them that wants to use our spaces is a bad man.
No, I agree, because if you are someone who wants to be a woman and sympathises with womanity, so to speak, then you would think, I don't want to intimidate and upset and disturb these people, because women tend to be empathetic and compassionate and pack animals more so than men. But men who actually want to go in, it's normally an exercise of power or an exercise of perversion. They certainly aren't thinking about the well-being of the sisterhood.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what keeps happening. Every time somebody talks about Graham's supposed incitement, which I don't think it is at all, I don't think it meets any criteria for incitement, but they always miss out the bit that he's talking about a man in a woman-only space. He's not talking about anybody who calls themselves trans. He's talking about someone who has invaded a boundary in which women feel unsafe with that man in there. And I think, I mean, I've got an 18-year-old daughter. I've definitely said words along those lines about men in her space, and you know, if a man's following, or if you can't run and you can't get out of a situation, of course you would kick a man in the testicles. Of course you would.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Do you know what? While I've been speaking to you, Kelly, my eyes have been scanning these screens above me because we've got all the other channels on and what they're putting out. And it turns out, I've got to ask you about this because it's just caught my eye. Sky's doing a big discussion, a big piece on menstrual leave. I can just see the headline there. Campaigners are calling for government action for menstrual leave. Now, look, I'm the sort of woman who goes, periods are crap. I don't care for them, I don't like them, but it's biology. And if you've got a particular condition where you have severe cramps, or you go absolutely tonto once a month, which sometimes I do, then I can understand saying, look, I'm really not in fit shape to, you know, physically come and be present in the office today. And I get that, because unless a man has had PMT or, you know, some pretty severe cramping, they have no idea. But this idea that there should be menstrual leave, I just think is such an insult to women. This stuff doesn't help us, in my opinion.
Oh my goodness, I so agree with you. And the same people pushing for menstrual leave are people that don't even know what a woman is. It's the same, you know, it's the same thing with mansplaining and manspreading. At the same time, you're not allowed to not see a penis in the ladies' changing room. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you. Some women really do suffer, and it's a proper medical condition, and quite rightly, they should be treated with sympathy and understanding at work. But most women can just get on with it. And I just think, look, you can complain about the gender pay gap if you like, ladies, or you can have a week off every month. It's entirely up to you. But just pick your poison.
Yeah, I totally agree. When people start banging on about, oh, we need time off work because it's our period, it's like you really are not helping fight the good fight. You know, can you just... Kelly, thank you ever so much. I always love speaking to you. It's been a while. Kelly J. Keane, I just adore her. I really do adore. What an iconic woman she is. She has done more for women's rights than most women I can think of. She really is a hero of our age. Round of applause for Kelly J. Keane, ladies and gentlemen, because she really does deserve it. OK, let's take a short break now. By the way, if you want to get in touch on any of the topics we're talking about today, and also I did ask you, by the way, about what you think about defections to reform from other parties. Should they be a sort of come one, come all? Let's build a team of brilliance and experience, or should they say, hey, you had your time in politics and it wasn't with us, so I'm afraid you kind of missed the boat. Let me know. 03444991000 is the number to send me a WhatsApp, or indeed to leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. You can text me as well, 87222, or call me, because we'll be doing calls for the last 45 minutes of the entire programme. 03444991000. You can call Faith and register your interest to be patched through to the studio at any point, and she is so brilliant and efficient, she will be calling you back after giving you a good vetting, of course. Let's do a couple of messages to wet your whistle, shall we? Margaret from Birmingham says, so pleased that Nadine has joined Reform, the more the merrier. Enjoy your trip to Birmingham. I am indeed off to conference tomorrow. Alex, I'm a Reform member, and it's like a football team. Experience of how the cogs work in Parliament is an advantage, providing it's not too many ex-Tories, says Kevin in Southampton. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts on that or anything else we have been talking about. I'm going to be back after this break.
very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Migrant.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. I'm joined by the gorgeous and wonderful Amy Gallagher, social commentator and a right woman's woman, stands up for the rights of women and girls to feel safe on our streets. She also used to be a nurse at the ghoulish Tavistock Clinic, where she was a whistleblower, so she's an all-round good egg and a modern-day Boudica. Welcome to the show, Amy. Now, the latest celeb has turned round and made a hoo-ha about how she's ashamed to be British because of the hotel protesters using immigration as excuse to be appalling. This is Ellie Goulding, who's turned around and she's said, they say it's for the women and children. I'm a pretty tough girl, but when I think about the times I've been intimidated in London, whether on the tube or train or walking with friends late at night, it involves those kinds of British men, either after a night at the pub, post-boxing or a football match. Stop using immigration as an excuse to be appalling. Now I'm like, Ellie, mate, when's the last time you got the tube, love? When was the last time you walked around the streets of London late at night? Because I doubt it's been in the last 10 years since you became a celeb, and things have changed, haven't they, Amy?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking, that the sort of celebrity hangouts, bars and clubs that she goes to does not represent what the sort of lifestyle that ordinary women live. And also, just because, you know, she hasn't experienced harassment from a migrant or from a non-British man doesn't mean that other women haven't. Like, it's not all about you, Ellie. Like, just because you haven't experienced it, you know, statistically we know that women and girls are experiencing this. Look, I mean, the protests, the Epping protests that were about the sexual assault of young girls, and we've just seen that the man that was accused of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl has just been charged, has just been convicted, actually. So this is a real thing. When they say, oh, they're saying it's about women and children, yeah, it is. It literally is. Like, and it's just because these celebrities, they live in they live a cushy lifestyle, and then none of this stuff affects them. And it makes me sick, quite frankly, how they can just throw working class girls, white working class girls, under the bus. You know,
but also there's a big divide here, and it goes back to what I like to call the left's obsession with lived experience, which somehow dies a death when it comes to this particular debate. Because there's been an open letter recently accusing the same. Oh, you know, the far right, Nigel Farage, is linking the safety of women and girls to immigration. It's not right, it's wankness, all the rest of it. The letter has been signed by, get this, so you've got Paloma Faith, who looks like some Wizard of Oz character, Charlotte Church, who, well, you know, less voice and face of an angel than she used to be. And then a load of people like Belle Ribeiro, Addy, Shami Chakrabarti. And I'm there thinking, if those women were walking down the streets at night, I don't think the men who have just come off the boats are going, hey, up! Look at that, I fancy a bit of that. This is the woman I've dreamt of all my life. I don't think their lived experience is going to be the same as a 14-year-old schoolgirl, you know, with sort of blonde hair and blue eyes or whatever she may look like, you know, in her sort of, you know, to these men, her sexual prime. I don't think that people like Shami Chakrabarti are getting the same sort of sexual harassment and intimidation as that girl, as somebody's daughter.
Well, exactly. A lot of the women on that list that signed that open letter were middle-aged, middle class, and ethnic minority women. And we know that the women, the girls that are being targeted, as you say, are young, working class, white girls. So, of course, the lived experience of Diane Abbott and Shari Chakrabarti is totally different, because that's not the demographic that are being hurt by these men or being targeted by these men. So, of course, their lived experience is different. And again, it just shows the egotism and the narcissism of these women, that they just think it's all about them and they don't want to step outside of their own experiences, which is what they're always telling other people to do, but they themselves don't do it. It's such double standards.
Right. I mean, these are the first people who would say, well, my experience as a woman of colour, life's been so much more difficult. I've been specifically targeted. I didn't get that pay rise. I wasn't invited to be a contestant on Strictly Come Dancing. I'm paid less. People look at me funny when they see me in a hijab, la, 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 la. They're the first people to say that stuff. But if someone like me or you says, my experience having long blonde hair is like it's a fly paper to a fly when it comes to men from certain parts of the world, I'm not allowed to say that. Oh, this is a privilege. No, it doesn't matter if people think I'm dumb or a Barbie or a bimbo or I must have slept with someone to get my job. The accusations of I bet she's doing that with him and all the rest of it. And the fact that when I, walk down the street, they deliberately look at me. I'm going to say something. When I was on the tube coming over from Paddington earlier, I actually noticed it was a sort of very diverse tube. And I noticed not only was I the only white woman on it, I was the only woman with blonde hair. And I felt almost every eye of every man on that tube, sort of hovering over me on a regular basis, because I had on my work slap on. I looked less like Rick Parfitt than I do in the mornings. And you feel very exposed. You can feel people looking at you. And I'm thinking, I'm in a blimmin' Anglo-Saxon country here. And the thing is, if I say that, these women would take such offence at that. What a dreadful thing to say. What a white supremacist, nasty, what a disgusting accusation to make. And it's like, but it's the truth.
Yeah, it's ironic, isn't it? Their ideology of intersectionality, which was all about how different groups, could be broken down and experience things differently, that just does not apply here. They just think that all women are the same, whereas actually all different women are having different experiences, as you say, and they just do not want to acknowledge that at all. They just want to, they just think that people are saying this for propagandistic reasons. They don't want to actually listen to women. Remember all the Me Too stuff, which was #BelieveAllWomen. Yeah. Where has that gone? It's not all women now. It's #Believe Left-Wing Women. That's what it is. Or women that we choose. It's not all women. They don't want to listen to the increasingly. More and more women are speaking up about this. I mean, you were one of the first, Alex, but more and more people are saying this. And actually, even some women on the left are saying that this is happening to me. And what are they going to do? Just keep shutting us up?
Well, they're going to try to, because unfortunately you only get to be a feminist if you're also a minority. That's the way it goes with intersectionality. You don't get to have any sort of stakehold in having a conversation about what is best for women unless you're to be from some sort of perceived minority. And yet we know when it comes to, as you said, the victims of these crimes tend to be young, white, working class girls. So no, not you, Diane Abbott. And I find it disgusting and very anti-sisterhood that these women think it's perfectly acceptable to be the mufflers, to be the silencers, to be the gags on these girls standing up and saying I'm not safe. It just defies common sense. It really does. Amy, thank you so much. I adore you. Let's go out for a glass of wine soon. It's been a while. OK, let's do some of your messages now before we go to break. And if you want to drop me a call as well, you can. 03444991000. Lines are open all the time. Phil in Portsmouth's wading into the period debate. That's a brave man there. Alex, you're right. Having a menstrual cycle shouldn't be an excuse for time off. I've known women who have had that Monday day off scenario. But maybe that's why we should have a female Prime Minister, because there wouldn't be any arguments just every 28 days. Some intense negotiations. Ha ha, very funny. Look, I would say this. There are women who suffer incredibly once a month with actual medical conditions related to this. And when you've got, whatever your medical condition is, if your eyeball falls out or rolls across the floor, or whether you're having such a bad period that you literally are sort of, pressed up in bed with an ice pack on your belly, writhing around in agony, then, you're not fit to go to work. But this idea that all of womankind should just go, I need a week off now. Come on, we're better than that. Hi Alex, I'm now a Reform member after voting Conservative all my life, so I've no objection to high-profile Conservatives joining us. After all, wasn't Nigel himself once a Tory too? Yeah, they say that. I think it was for all about 10 minutes. I'd love to see Robert Jenrick move across, and after listening to her talk to Mike Graham earlier, I think Liz Truss would be a fantastic addition, says Rob. In Smethwick, Paul in Eastleigh in Hampshire says, is it time for the Fabian Society to be banned like a prescribed anti-British organisation? I don't believe in banning think tanks and political movements because that's the sort of thing that they want to do, right? Which is the sort of thing we should fight against. But it's interesting, isn't it, that we fought communism tooth and nail for 5 decades at the cost of trillions of dollars. I'm talking about the Western world here. And now it's just like, oh yeah, do you want to run the country? Oh, fancy setting up something called the EU. What about being a lawyer and letting all these illegals come and stay? It is a madness. I certainly think that what we need is the sort of democratic disposition to get the people in power who are going to weed all of these people out by hook and by crook. Peter in Lincolnshire says, detain and deport all illegal migrants, visas, overstaying migrants, all those claiming benefits, and criminal migrants. Now, men, women and dependents. That sounds like a huge amount of remigration. Let's quickly squeeze in Karen, who's in Bournemouth. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Alex. How you doing?
I'm very well. I'm afraid I haven't given you much time. I've just looked at the clock, so let's make this quick. What can I do you for, Karen?
Well, it just never ceases to amaze me how they go on about, oh, these poor people don't understand our culture, but they know absolutely everything about what they can get, how they get it, where they have to go to get it, and it's just a load of... Oh, I was about to swear.
Well, that's the thing, Karen. All these men coming across on the boats, they're the nuclear physicists and clearly lawyers in the making, aren't they? At least that's what we're constantly told. But you're right, there's way too many useful idiots. There's a fifth column of NGOs and communists in this country who want to see the erosion of our nationhood. And we must fight it. Karen, I'm sorry it's been so quick, but it's been fantastic speaking to you, my darling. I'm going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere because I will see you for another hour of unbridled information on the other side of this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello. Welcome back to the show. It's been delightful having your company for the past 2 hours, if indeed I have had your company for the past 2 hours. Pat on the back Well done for enduring me for that long. But I really do appreciate your loyalty. And let's make this last hour all about you, because we're going to do a thrilling segment now on a book that I've just been sent and I cannot wait to break the spine of. I'm a real vandal when it comes to books. I never understand people, so I'm going down a little sort of tangent here. But some people are really funny about books, aren't they? And they're like, got to have my book like this and put my bookmark in and put it on the shelf. I'm like, I studied English Lit. And I'm like, no, books need to be abused. I fold down my pages. Sometimes when I'm particularly interested, I'll, highlight something or scribble a note in it. And then more often than not, when I finish a book, I give it to a charity shop, because I kind of like books being in circulation. I like them having multiple owners and having many lives. And there's nothing better either than getting a second-hand book and finding somebody else's sort of little notes and mementos in it and bookmarks and things like that. It's like a little treasure chest of somebody else's interpretation and imprint on the organic life of that particular piece of work. So I'm sorry to say, Richard, when I do read your book, the very first thing I'm going to do is get it broken apart so I can get right into the meat of it. I'm joined by the excellent Richard Cabage, who has just released today an incredible book called The Defector, which is a gripping Cold War narrative. It reads like a thriller, but it is all a true story. And it's the untold story of a KGB agent who saved MI5 and changed the Cold War. Should we learn a bit more? Richard, tell me about your protagonist.
Well, thank you for having me on the programme. It's exciting to be here. Well, the protagonist is quite a dysfunctional character. He really shouldn't have been a KGB officer to begin with. He was more probably suited for being a bit of a player of sorts, an entertainer. And he was talented enough to get recruited by the KGB. In fact, he was talent spotted when he was in his teens, while he was studying. He was recruited. He didn't qualify for the illegals program, where they were supposed to dispatch him to the US to pretend to be a tourist so he could spy for the KGB, all because he was sort of partying and boozing and getting drunk and womanizing. So he went off the rails. So they forced him into another program, and over sort of the period of 5 years or so, they trained him up, and then eventually he made it into Department V, which is the sabotage and assassinations program. And that's a really high-profile role, and it's in that role that he was sent to the UK in 1969 to plot against Britain. And those plots were pretty serious and significant. He was here to plot to kill politicians, to conduct operations against Britain's seawater. They wanted to contaminate the seawater with radioactive waste and blame it on the Americans. They wanted to target our emergency food supplies. They wanted to attack our economic and military bases and targets. And so we only know this because in 1971, this dysfunctional guy who was living a double life sort of came to a crossroads in his life when he realized that he was seeing about 5 different women, including his wife, and he was hoping that the UK would kick him out of the country so that he could return to Moscow and divorce his wife to be with his lover. Of course, MI5 was quite suspicious of him when he approached the agency to tell him that. And so they didn't go ahead with the plan that he had in mind, but they said, let's continue sort of the debriefing process. So throughout that process, they got him to provide information, including the information that I've just revealed about the KGB plots that were being conducted in London. And soon enough, they ran a surveillance operation on him to figure out whether or not this guy was telling the truth. And they discovered that he actually was telling the truth. And then there was a turning point that I'll come to in a second. But that's kind of his backstory in a nutshell, and I'll give you some of the more of the fascinating tales about him.
We'll do. Carry on. I'm absolutely rapt. So, MI5 have got eyes on. He actually wants to be booted out of the country to divorce some Krupskaya, whatever she might be called. And they've realised here that they might well have a useful asset.
Correct. Yeah, and they realised that at a sort of a perfect time for MI5. For about 10 years up until then, MI5 had been struggling with intelligence failures. You've got the intelligence failures dating back to 1950 when Burgess and McLean famously defected to Moscow. And then subsequently, of course, we had Kim Philby in 1963. And then after that, there were a number of failures that were taking place in the 1960s. So MI5, because of its insecurity at the time and because of its inability to deal with this overwhelming KGB threat, would often turn to the CIA for advice. So they became slavishly deferential to their friends across the Atlantic. And of course, the CIA had its own way of doing things. And the CIA believed firmly that the KGB had created this deception program called the Master Plan. And this so-called Master Plan was training up Soviet officials in how to become defectors. And so they believed that anyone who approaches the West intending to defect is actually a person who has been sent as a double agent. So they were to shut them out. In addition to that, they believed that part of the master plan and the deception program was to penetrate the agencies themselves by recruiting people from within.
Wow.
Hence why MI5 was quite nervous about spies within its midst. So they launched an investigation into their former Deputy Director General, their former Director General, and another person within MI5. And also the CIA convinced MI5 for a short time, not forever, but for a short time, and got them panicked that Harold Wilson was a spy.
Wow.
All of that information would turn out to be completely false, based on hearsay and sort of imagination. And that was the imagination of yet another defector who had actually defected in the early 1960s. In 1961, a man called Anatoly Golitsyn. It was his theories that fermented the paranoia within the CIA, which was then imposed and inflicted upon MI5 here. So fast forward to 1971, when this guy Oleg Lialin approached MI5, the British did something that they hadn't done really during the Cold War. They figured, we want to cut the Americans out of this operation, because they rightly suspected that if they were to inform the Americans about this approach, the Americans would guide them away from the approach, saying this is a guy who is double agent who has been sent like those other guys we've informed you about. So they cut the Americans out of the operation, and over a period of 4 months, they debriefed this guy, Oleg Lialin, and he provided gold in the context of intelligence material, and he exposed the identities of all of the KGB officers operating undercover in the UK, which allowed the UK to then formulate a plan to expel them. Now, they were going to expel them in late 1971, but then something happened that was completely unexpected. Oleg Lialin, being Oleg Lialin, was driving pissed one night down Tottenham Court Road, and he got pulled over by the cops. And when they pulled him over, he started screaming at the cops. He was with a woman who they let go, and she took off and called a cab, took him into a police station. He refused to have a breath test, to be breathalyzed. He refused to give his name initially. Eventually, he relented. And so the next morning, a Soviet embassy official came to bail him out. When they bailed him out, the Soviets realized this guy can't really be trusted anymore. He's slightly compromised. He's been arrested. He's probably going to have to go to court. He will be having to go to court in a month. And we're going to recall him. So the KGB recalled him. And the day they tried to recall him, he contacted MI5 and said, I want to defect. Right. And the best part about that is on the day he wanted to defect, he rang up one of his lovers and said, will you run away with me? She said no. So he hung up and called the next lover, who said yes.
Oh my goodness. So there you go. There's always a woman behind all the mayhem. But what's interesting, actually, I mean, it's incredible that this is a real life story. John le Carre eats your heart out. It's incredible. But what is fascinating are the echoes of today, because I always argue the Cold War never, ever finished. It wasn't like it was glasnost and perestroika and then everyone, sat around did kumbaya. We know whether it's the poisoning of Litvinenko and the Skripals, that we have Russian agents active on our soil, Iranian agents. We also can see, and this is something that we were talking about, that there is this creeping American apathy towards Russia once again. What is it, when you looked into the history of Oleg, made you think, you know, this really has some sort of harrowing reverberations in 2025?
I tell you what, so as soon as Trump came into office, because I specialize in researching Five Eyes, the intelligence spy network that was created after the Second World War to combat the Soviet threat, and which brings together the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Of course, that spy network repurposed after the collapse of the Soviet Union, because the Russian threat was kind of no longer, it became the terrorism threat, the Islamist terrorist threat. That's what they focused on. And then in sort of 2016, 15, 16, when the first Trump campaign was taking place and there was the threat of Russian interference, that's when it kind of rebooted to start looking more closely at Russian interference. But the Russian threat, as you rightly say, never went away. Now, we know that Putin's rise to power brought with it a very key factor relating to assassinations and sabotage. So when Oleg Lyalin defected back in 1971, his defection led to the closure of the Department V, which is the Sabotage and Assassinations Department. That program was not revived until Putin returned to power. And his first known target in the West is Alexander Litvinenko, who they went after and killed in 2006. And of course, we've got the Skripals in 2018, as you pointed out earlier. But their mission to continue to foment dissent and to create sort of chaos within the West is a continuing situation. But there's currently what appears to be a reset in the US, particularly within the US Trump administration, because when you look at it through the lens of the intelligence agencies, there are a lot of clear-headed, capable people, and I talk to them on a regular basis, who don't believe the direction that the administration's going is the right direction, because up until now, although there's been disagreements between the UK and US about how to approach the Russian threat and whether or not our policies are better than their policies, there's never been a disagreement about whether Russia is an adversary.
Right.
And so right now we're at a crossroads where there's this question. Now, if the US doesn't believe Russia is an adversary and wants to reset with Russia, well, what impact will that have on US thinking regarding other threats?
No, it's interesting.
Or other issues. So how do you isolate your contaminated thinking about one major adversary and not let it seep into other areas?
It's a really interesting thing. I mean, a good mate of mine was a deputy director at the Pentagon, and, you know, he's an absolute hawk when it comes to Russia. But someone did say to me the other day that perhaps there's almost a divide and conquer attitude, that if there was a way to start creating a schism between Russia and Iran or Russia and China and picking them off and things like that, that actually might be a better way to break up the anti-Western axis. I am no expert on these things, but I certainly think you don't really have to think too much to realise that Putin is a bad un. He says it all and he does it all quite out in the open. Richard, thank you so much for sending me a copy of your book. Now, it's out today, isn't it? People can go and
it's out
and
today,
get this.
yes, go and grab it. Yes, absolutely. In fact, it's been discounted on Amazon.
What? You're having a fire sale on you, Richard.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It means that there's a lot of traffic to the website. It's a wonderful thing.
There you go. Excellent. Well,
Thank you so much
congratulations.
for having me on. I'm really grateful.
I'm grateful to have you. The Defector, that is a book by Richard Kabaj. It really is quite the thriller. You can see it previewed as well in today's Sun, talking about this pretty extravagant story of a sex and alcohol-fueled world of a KGB super spy. Change the direction of the Cold War. Right after the break, we're going to be taking your calls on any of the topics we've been talking about today. 03444991000 is the number. I mean, you could talk about anything we've talked about today or something else, quite frankly, because we are the home of free speech. So roll up. And if you've got a question for me, feel free to ask. If you disagree with me or you think I'm getting something wrong, let me know. I can take it. I'm a big girl. I ain't Rachel Reeves. I ain't going to cry. Although, saying that, I did the other night, didn't I? I got very sort of patriotic and upset about the dystopian nature of Britain. And Mark says, just one favour, please don't cry, because you made me cry in front of my friends and they all laughed at me. Do you know what, Mark? I think it's good when men can shed a tear or two. There's something a bit weird about men who can't do that. You know, it's like, let it out. You'll be happier. find those emotions, grab hold of that empathy. It makes you a human. And you know what? Losing this country is worth shedding a tear about, isn't it? Because it's directly linked to the fire and the faith of defending it. And I hope that we are all part of the People's Army who would stand up and fight for Britain. 0344499 1000 is the number. People are messaging me about Tory defections to reform. A mixed bag here. Someone just said, if Nigel puts a Tory in my seat, I ain't voting reform. A lot of people, however, are saying we want the brightest and the best to come across. If you are a reform voter, what do you think? Is there such a thing as too many Tories, or would you say come one, come all? We need the expertise. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message as well. If you're going to do that, you've got to write the word talk before you write the content of your message. I'm going to take a short break now, but I'll see you after these adverts.
Very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Migrant.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right, it's my favourite bit of the show. It's when we rifle through your thoughts and opinions and get some of you on the line and listen to some voice notes as well. Helena. Ooh, I like this. Hello, Alex. I discovered Sir Laurie Magnus, chair of the Government Ethics Committee, is a Fabian Society member. Of course he is. Also found older info that Mark Rowley, head of the Met Police, was a Fabian. The references now seem to have been removed from the government website. Dig, says Helena. Thank you for doing that research. They're everywhere. They're everywhere, aren't they? We need to carry on talking about this lot because they're pretty sinister, in my view. Robin Taplow says virtual G&T on its way. Thank you ever so much. I promise you that this has had a cup of tea in it without the G, unfortunately. Immediate deportation for our imported sex offender. If they stick him in jail for a year, he can then claim asylum. Somebody shoot me, says Robin Taplow. No thanks. I want you to carry on fighting the good fight. We need as many of us as we can. Can we really trust any politician now after this latest scandal? And will reform be squeaky clean? Maybe we should get the next government to change the laws on all politicians' actions and have them suspended from politics. I do think that, you know, the sort of weak-willed parliamentary recall system we have is a bit rubbish. You know, where you've got that man in North East Somerset who's accused of historic sex offences, who's been kicked against children, who's been booted out of the Labour Party and is just hanging on saying, oh, I didn't do it, and he's basically blocking a seat. I'm sure the locals would really want to say, look, you know, while you're under investigation, we don't want you to represent us in Parliament. I don't think we, as the voter, have enough rights to basically sack our MPs when they misbehave. Afternoon, Alex. Oh, come on. This convicted asylum seeker has just booked his ticket to stay here. The human rights lovers will argue he can't be sent back because he's a convicted pervert and he'll be persecuted, says Donna in Brum. I have no doubt that we ain't going to be getting rid of that man anytime soon. Here we go. Oh, I want to read this one out because this is Daryl from Lincoln. He's done a little bit of mathematics on behalf of all of us. It's a subject matter that I'm not very good at, I must admit. And so I cannot qualify or corroborate the numbers that Daryl has come up with. But he says, I remember listening to your show when the young girls rang in saying that 70% of sexual assaults are by white British men. So I went and got some statistics and figures and I did the maths on that. To cut a long story short, it worked out that per capita of white British sex offenders compared to illegal migrant sex offenders, if you were a female sat in a football stadium full of white British men, 50,000 capacity, there would be a 2% chance you would be sat next to a sex offender. If the same stadium was full of illegal migrant men, the chances would be 85%. Now, I'm afraid I'm sort of just dyspraxic when it comes to mathematics, so I can't do the sums on that myself. But if you say so, Daryl, I will just agree. But what we do know is per capita, there is an overrepresentation. When people make the lazy comment of, well, you know, most sex assaults in Britain are committed by white people, it's like, well, yeah, we're still a majority white country, so that stacks up, doesn't it? Shall we have a little voice note before we hit up the calls? Let's listen to Judy.
I think reform should have anybody that wants to come in the party, so long as they have the party values. Many moons ago, I were a member of the Labour Party until Blair sent my son away to fight in an illegal war. And then I joined UKIP, and now I've joined Reform. So I feel that we should accept anybody, provided they're okay.
Well, there you go. I like that. It actually does show, doesn't it, that, you know, a lot of reform supporters, because most people are saying exactly the same thing, are just open-minded, open-hearted, want meritocracy and want quality. I mean, the Conservative Party, we don't like reform, we hate you. You know, they've never wanted to share the sandpit, have they? Which I must admit sticks in my craw a bit, because a lot of these people in the Conservatives said all sorts of beastly, dastardly, awful, offensive things against Nigel Farage in his previous iterations, and those people who were loyal to Nigel. And now we're sort of, you know, tugging at his sleeve, saying, can I come and join? And I do kind of think, really? But I'm not saying that about Nadine. I actually like Nadine a lot. We get on very well. And she's actually whispered quiet to me on occasions before how much she likes reform. So I think that she is a woman of true heart and conviction on this one. And let's now listen to Sharon, who wants to talk about Muslim countries and sexual assaults.
Hi, Alex. Just to clear something up. Most Muslim countries have much more harsher penalties for sexual assault and rape than Britain. Most carry the death penalty. Migrants who are coming from Muslim countries claiming, most likely by their solicitors, cultural differences, in these cases are lying. I would suggest that these migrants come here with expectations that they can do these things in the West because women are not restricted in the way they dress, and they have probably been told it's okay. So when they find themselves in court, they display a sense of entitlement and outrage. And when they are not prosecuted and punished for these crimes, it sends a really good message to the future wannabe migrants that they come here and indeed commit these crimes and they will not be punished.
Do you know what? I totally agree with every word that Sharon has said. And there's another factor here. So I've for a long time been going to Marrakesh. It's one of my favourite cities on earth. I blimmin' love Morocco. I do. It's just the food. All of my house is full of Moroccan stuff, like fabrics and bits and bits. It's amazing. And I love hiking up the mountains. Mount Toubkal, that's a tough one. Going down to the desert, staying in a Saharan. I mean, it is the most beautiful country. I adore it. But when I go to Morocco, I do expect the old as a walk through the souks. But something changed in Marrakesh since the first time I went there in 2007. And what changed, it seems to me, was the advent of smartphones and the advent of freely available internet. Because when I was first going there, if you wanted to send an email, you'd probably have to go down to an internet cafe, maybe like Hotmail or something. And I tell you what has changed around the world and the advent of smartphones is also the ubiquitous nature of pornography. It is everywhere. And men in these other countries who are watching pornography aren't watching a woman in a hijab or a woman in a burqa, getting up to stuff. They're probably watching the likes of people like Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips. And actually, a lot of these porn actresses tend to have that very sort of Anglo-Saxon look to them. Not all of them, but I'm sorry if you statistically look at pornography, which I've never done, but I would, if someone were to do an audit, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that there was a massive overrepresentation of women, say, with blonde hair and white women. And equally, when they watch some of the imported programmes, even Hollywood. I mean, everything in Hollywood now went through a phase of just being, unnecessary sex, didn't it? I'm sorry to sound like a modern-day Mary, what's-her-names, but when I think of that one with the dragons and the swords, which I know, Game of Thrones, for instance, I remember watching the first episode and I was just like, oh, for God's sake, I mean, do we have to? And maybe I'm a bit of a prude, but I just kind of think, I remember growing up when there were eyebrows raised about the shortness of skirts on the Spice Girls, and I kind of think, well, look at where we got to now. But the problem is, in a lot of this exported culture coming from America and coming from the Western world, there is a fetishization of white women, white Anglo-Saxon women. And so these men coming from other countries see all of that, they're exposed to it, and they have very different ideas to these women, and they are actively told that these women don't respect themselves, that they're not good, pious women, they're not modest, they're not covering their hair, so therefore they're inviting all of this trouble, because actually that's the whole point of it. If you don't cover your hair up, then you're bringing shame, that you're potentially tempting men. So if that's the fundamental narrative of your creed and your culture, then you come to Britain and see, a girl on a night out cavorting with, lips like a punched lasagna and a very low-cut top, then you're going to have a certain attitude towards her, aren't you? And it's a very toxic cocktail indeed. Shall we do some calls now? And before we go to the next break, speak to Steve, who's in Birmingham. Hi, Steve.
Hello. Yeah, I just found out about Angela Rayner.
Yeah.
Right. At the end of the day, right, she's done wrong, right? And she's getting really told off about it. Like, I can't say how I really feel. But Keir Starmer and all the rest of all his Labour Party people on the front bench, all their faces look miserable. It looks like they've all done something wrong, and it's just opened a can of worms.
I don't think you can be left-wing and happy, to be honest. I mean, look at the statistics. Communism is responsible for 148 million deaths worldwide. I haven't seen an example of one happy and successful communist country ever in history. Yeah. It's all gulags and collectives, and, it doesn't really look like much fun.
No, it doesn't, but I've been watching it, and also what I can't understand, Every time there's a problem with somebody in the Labour, they have to bring their families into it. Keir Starmer threw his son over the bus when he got caught with Ali. Angela Rayner has just thrown her son under the wheels of a bus because she got caught fiddling the tax. Crybaby Reeves blamed it all on family problems. Excuse me, they all can't have problems like everybody else does in the world because they don't have to worry about it.
Right, don't bring your baggage to work. It's not professional. If you're in a position of responsibility, it doesn't matter what's going on at home, you've got to buckle up and get on with it, okay? You know, I sat here presenting shows before where I feel like my life is a dumpster fire. Sometimes it might sneak out in the eyes. You might see that little glimmer of joy and optimism has disappeared briefly. But I come up to work and I try and get on with the job, as people should do. And I totally agree with you. People need, if you're going to go into the world of politics, I think it is important to be an empath, to actually feel and believe what you're talking about, not just in it for the money and the access. But you have to be gritty. You have to have resilience. You have to have a thick skin, because this is a very important high-powered job. You're representing not just the tens of thousands of people in your own constituency, but the 70-odd million in this country.
That's correct. That's correct. And also I'd like to know, how has she got £4 million in the bank when her job, before she became an MP, was looking after old age pensioners?
Do we know she's got $4 million in the bank?
Yeah, that's what they've said. That's what all the channels are saying, and all YouTubers are saying, that she's got $4 million in the bank.
I don't know what she's got in the bank, and frankly, if she's sort of done some side hustles and made some good money, then fine. You know, what I don't want is politicians to be sort of sitting there going, "I've got no money," because it sort of makes them more easily exposed to bribery. Actually, controversially, don't think we pay politicians enough, but you do kind of think she's made a pretty penny or two from a woman who seemingly has had a career of service to the unions and then an MP, which aren't particularly multi-million-pound salaries. So I do think there are further... I do think this is going to go on and on, I must admit. Steve, thank you ever so much for your call. I think we ought to take a short break now, but when I come back, it's going to be more of your calls, more of your messages, more of your voice notes. So keep them flowing in. 0344 499 1000 is the number to dial. It is your normal network rate. So come and have a chit-chat with me, particularly if you've not done it before. Make it a first. You can use that number to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp as well. 87222 is the number if you'd like to text me, and you've got to write the word talk before you text. I'm back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Do you know, I've been duped by Floor 14, our canteen at work. I came in, I was so thirsty on the underground that I started buying up drinks. And they don't have many sensible drinks up there. They've got all these sort of kombuchas and things like that. And I just wanted to get something that sounded like it was going to keep me awake, and do the job of sating my thirst. And I got this thing, lean and green Vit hit. What the hell? Am I drinking shampoo? Who does that? That's horrible. Awful. Thought I'd share that with you. Alex, I'm delighted to see Nadine Dorris join Reform. She's a very bright woman and can only be an asset. Also, thank you for bringing the Fabian Society into the spotlight. People need to understand what their agenda is and work out how we can stop them. From Deb in Devon. I really want somebody, probably someone like the great Charlotte Gill, to now do a deep dive into all Fabian members and where they are, both here and internationally, because I reckon there's a few of them dotted around in the EU, the ECHR, the UN. We really do need to sort of name and, get a list of these people so we can keep our eyes on what they're up to. Martin from Gillingham says, are the defectors genuine or are they Trojan horses arranged by the other parties? Check them out, Nigel. There is always that worry, having been through the heady UKIP days, that when you have people come over, are they who they say they are? Certainly when it comes to MP defectors from that era, I think they were all good uns. But certainly when people have come over as staff from the Conservative Party to work in a Farage entity, I do believe there are people who are sort of working against the project. And you have to be careful, don't you? Hello from Armagh. I'm a proud supporter of Reform. I'm preparing to use my first ever vote in their favour, but there's one Tory I wish would defect, and that's Jacob Rees-Mogg. I think he'd be such an asset. Everyone loves a bit of Jacob Rees-Mogg. The other thing is about the Mogster is he's a real conviction politician. He never has been wishy-washy over his ideology. He's a staunch Roman Catholic and always votes in that way and doesn't sort of keep it a secret from anybody, but he believes what he believes. He doesn't just always toe the party line. He's also a very dear and kind man. He's a gentle character. He's a lovely human being. But he is very loyal. And so will that trump his ideology, loyalty to the Conservative Party? I suppose time will tell. Hi, Alex, and good evening. If a suitable right-leaning Tory wants to defect, then take the experience, but only take the best. Mogg is certainly experienced and has the right views. We have to get some consolidation on the right. We can't survive another Labour term. It's our last democratic vote. Says Tony in Warrington. I do think that it is time now for the right to sort themselves out and get together. But we know there's way too many lefties who call themselves righties. We need to get rid of them. Hi, Alex. I'm happy for Reform to welcome the cream of politicians from any party, the real genuine politicians who have made a career of trying to do what's best for Britain. And the British people, we all know who they are and they stand out like beacons. But Reform doesn't need the get-rich-quick merchants who only want the trappings of being an MP, and Nigel knows who they are because they stand out like sore thumbs, says Ernie. Let's have a listen to a voice note from Keith.
As Reform have said, they have a very strong vetting position and in place. I suggest that the way to sort this, anybody who applies who's a Conservative currently at the moment, look at their voting record, visit Hansard. Those that have voted along party lines blindly and raised their hand during a vote and gone through voting corridors and voted to follow the party line, pretty much always do not accept them. We need people that speak their mind, work from their head and their heart.
There you go. I think that is very sensible advice indeed. You can very easily see, can't you, if these are conviction politicians, if these are ideologues, or if these people are essentially just career politicians. And let's have a quick listen to Pete now.
If Angela Rayner steps down, God help us if we get someone like David Lammy as a Deputy Prime Minister. This country is going down the drain under that government anyway, but it'll go down a lot quicker, mate, if he gets the job. Oh dear, time for a snap election.
I mean, I don't know who's worse, Rayner or Lammy. The fact that he's Foreign Secretary chills me to the bone with some of the extreme leftist nonsense he's come out with in the past. But we are where we are and stuck with who we're stuck with. I kind of feel with David Lammy, they hide him in a cupboard. You don't hear him do the media rounds, do you? He's not very often the one being grilled by the press. They dig out the likes of Bridget Phillips and a lot because all those sort of wets at Sky News go really soft on her. But you don't really get much Lammy. They kind of hid him in a cupboard during the campaign as well. He just pops up every now and then with a fishing rod to have a photo call with JD Vance. And that's all he's allowed to do. Rightly so. Let's have a chit-chat now to someone with a wonderful, beautiful, brilliant name. This is Alex in Birmingham. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Alex. Good evening.
Oh, you're a boy, Alex. Hello, boy, Alex.
Thanks for recognising that I do get mistaken for being a woman, actually.
No, don't say that. I mean, maybe it's just my earpiece not working very well. I've been poking around in my lug all evening with this thing. Right, what do you want to talk about?
On the freedom of speech and the arrest of Graham Linehan by 5 armed police officers, I was just thinking the devil's in the detail, and the fact that he made a joke about a man, trans woman, being in a female space, receiving a bit of a punch in the nuts as part of the punchline. As we know,
this is the thing. Wes Streeting himself, if you look at his social media footprint, was advocating chucking someone under a bus or something like that. I can't remember what it was now, but it was pretty violent in nature. And if you're going to go back in, there's also punch him in the balls. It's a bit like when Lucy Connolly said, "For all I care." Most human beings are discerning enough to realise that that isn't an instruction to go out and commit the act being described tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, and I think the devil in the detail point really is that given the ruling of the Supreme Court, we shouldn't really be seeing that situation arising. So there should never really be any trans. So knowing the fact, the police knowing that the chances of this happening now is very slim, he could have well have said punch your leprechaun in the nuts, because the chances of it ever happening is never really going to happen, because that situation shouldn't really arise. So why arrest him?
I always think as well that if you're going to charge somebody with inciting violence, don't you need someone to have gone and acted upon it? I mean, to me, that would make common sense. You told someone to go and whack that person and they did. Therefore, you're as culpable because you told them to do it. Although even then, I think that idiot shouldn't have listened to that instruction. But if you can't demonstrate that anybody's read that and taken it seriously, to me, personally, I think it should all fall apart.
Yeah, it's kind of in void, isn't it? It's not going to be able to happen.
Anyway, we live in a mad clown world, don't we, Alex? And it's been wonderful talking to you, my darling. A few messages before we go to our advert break. I love this one, Mike from Wigan. Alex, I can reveal that the advice given to Angela was from that well-known solicitor, Reynolds. Oh, very funny. Of course, he is referring to the business secretary who told everyone he was a solicitor on his CV when he never qualified. I reckon our Ange goes tomorrow in an attempt to steal Nigel's thunder, says Peter in Hailsham. Goes where? Do you think she's going to defect over to the Corbyn lot? Kaz from Bedford said, watching Angela Rayner's interview of Beth Rigby is like listening to Philomena Kunk. It is a bit, I mean, you do watch it and just think, do you girls just want to open the Chardonnay and like smoke your vapes together? Because it couldn't be more cosy. Okay, interesting. Someone's given me a review on what one can find on porn websites. You seem to know too much about this, Joey. I think you should spend a bit more time in real women's company. I think Mogg will be an absolute legend if he joins Reform. He is English through and through. He believes in the Christian faith and he's very clever about the laws. He wants to stop illegal migration. Reform have to be careful. As I disagree with them getting rid of the 2-child benefit, I think they could do it through taxes for working parents instead of those who don't work and don't want to work, says Sharon. A lot of people are saying, bring Mogg, bring Mogg, bring Mogg. He's the man in demand. Alex, when and not if the Conservative MPs that are hanging on, or the ones that have already lost their seats in Parliament, head to Reform UK, they shouldn't be able to go on the front line, says Wayne in Frodsham. Right, let's take a short break now, but when we come back, there's more calls to get through, there's more messages to read out, so there is still some opportunity to have your say. 03444 499 1000 is the number to dial, or to WhatsApp, or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number if you'd like to text me. Write the word talk before you text, and I'll see you in just a moment.
very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Migrant.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right, I've got a treat in store for you. I don't know what it is. Shall we press the magic button of telephone tombola and listen to a voice note from Rob?
I've got no problem at all with them joining us, but I wouldn't give them a job in any ministerial role or on any front bench, because they proved when they were in power that they were pathetic, really. But we can use their experience, and then we can put fresh faces on the front bench and give Nigel the support that he needs, but just use them for their experience.
There you go. I think that's fairly sage advice. Joe from Shrewsbury says, I'm sorry, but all the people like Nadine Dorries defecting to reform because they know they'll win the next election and they're just interested in having a job, not because they truly believe in reform policy in the state of our country. They're looking after themselves again and not the interests of the British people. There are going to be people who actually genuinely are ideologues and do believe in the interests of the British people. And I like to think actually that Nadine Dorries is one of those. Great to see Nadine Dorries defect to reform, a real move forward for the party. I hope Mark Francois follows suit, says Nathan in Weymouth. Someone's just said this. I agree with this. Alex, probably less important than the main story, but I'm incensed that Labour comms are suddenly full of patriotic flags. Me too. Don't even try and gaslight us. We see through you. We know that you just love international human rights law and don't really love us because you use it against us all the time. So stop flying our flag. You don't deserve to, even if you are the Prime Minister of this country. Dan from Kent says, we were clearly a capitalist society before Brexit, even if we didn't have strong enough leaders to call the shots. Blair's probably the most capitalist PM this century we've ever had, and he was Labour. But that's how bureaucracy has overtaken leadership. The thing is about Blair, he was the one who brought all the radical lefties into the quangocracy and put them in positions of power. But there's a weird merge with the Fabian Society and international big banking. Remember how much all of them banged the drum against Brexit? They all wanted us to remain in so they could have their corporate cartel of influence, and also all these big businesses who sign up hook, line and sinker to all the sort of social justice nonsense and DEI stuff. Capitalism ain't what it used to be, sunshine. And let's have a chit chat now to Daniel, who is in Shropshire. Hello there, Daniel.
Hello, Alex. You sure you said earlier about Gary Lineham's arrest, and you were saying you're not sure what's going on with free speech in this country. Have you ever heard of the term repressive tolerance?
I feel like I'm about to be told about it.
Right. So I think everyone in the country knows we're living in a sort of cultural Marxist sort of period. Repressive tolerance was a term invented in the 1960s by a Marxist called Herbert Marcuse, and his claim of repressive tolerance offered the idea that tolerating all opinions, good ones and bad ones, can uphold oppression. So certain voices should be limited for the greater good. Now the thing is, this was actually absorbed into the framework of critical race theory, which then was absorbed into critical social justice, which also encompasses gender theory. So that's where this ideology of certain voices should be oppressed for the perfect utopian society.
Right, that's really interesting. Do you know, I can't remember who was telling me the other day about George Orwell's 1984 was designed all based upon the foundation of the Fabian Society in 1884. The reason he picked 1984 is because that would be a century after the establishment of the Fabian Society and predicted the dystopian future that would then come to pass, and the man was right. The man is basically like some sort of, I don't know, modern-day fortune teller.
Even if you go back, I would, if I were you, have a read on critical race theory and critical social justice, because they have their roots in Marxism from the Frankfurt School.
Yeah.
And even today, even if you actually look at what critical race theory and gender theory, all they did was they took Marx's principle of oppressed versus oppressor and replaced the classes.
Yeah.
So class was redefined as race and gender. And the oppressor, so biological men and women and white people were been recast as the oppressor class, and everybody else as the oppressed class.
Yeah. No, it is. It's just, I'd never understand where these people adhere to all this mad ideology and come up with it. What is mentally wrong with them? I always think they must have been bullied at school or something and just have a chip on their shoulder, and they want to sort of punish the rest of the world because they feel so dreadful about their own existences. Daniel, thank you ever so much for your call. I'll be doing my reading up on that. I find this stuff fascinating. As a former student of philosophy, back when I was at university, you were allowed to be right-wing, thank goodness. Let's speak now to Sarah, who is in Stockbridge. Good evening, Sarah.
Good evening, Alex. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I was just thinking about the whole detail with Angela Rayner and the 3 alleged advisors that gave her the advice. And obviously we know now one set of those have come out and said, actually, we didn't give her advice. But the thing that concerns me, I suspect, really is the fact that the 2 other sets of advisors who supposedly gave her advice on the situation she was in, have their names sullied. I mean, we don't know who they are, but one would think that people do actually know who they are, and that this is going to have a reputational damage to them.
Well, it's interesting, actually. I mean, if they are named and shamed and accused of being the ones responsible for this absolute shower, then they might even have some sort of legal case to make of defamation and reputational damage. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're accusing lawyers of doing something that they didn't, you're probably picking the wrong fights with that one. Sarah, thank you ever so much. Look who's just come into the studio.
Well,
it's a modern day.
A bit sweaty,
You're
like
burning hot, aren't you, Sam?
Yeah, well, I've just rushed up from makeup and been eating on the way. I'm a bit late tonight. How's it gone anyway?
You've managed to wet through your makeup that quickly.
No, I washed my. Yeah, I've done it all. Yeah, really.
So you went to makeup and then washed your face.
No, I can't remember.
Someone down in makeup
is
like
a vortex down there.
Someone in makeup is literally looking at the screen right now.
No, they don't turn up for us. We have to do it ourselves, which is why I'm a different colour each night.
I'll do it if you like. I've got my makeup bag. I'm staying over tonight, so I'll, during the break, I'll put on
Alan Brazil's bedroom.
No, who is Alan Brazil?
He used to present breakfast. I don't know what he does now.
People always say to me, because you walk through that zone, the links zone, and people are like, who listen to talk about, oh, do you see this person? I'm like, I don't know any of them are. No. It's men wearing links, watching screens.
Yeah, well, that's where I started, isn't it? So, yeah, but it's best to stay away from them.
I'm going to read this message to you because this delights me.
Yeah, go on.
Carl in Derbyshire said, these migrant perverts must be thoroughly disappointed that the main enabling cohort of support comes from a menagerie of hysterical blue-haired lesbians or ugly older women from the WI.
Yeah, no, it's true.
It is, though.
It is true, isn't it? They are from a certain demographic, and it's weird, isn't it? What's the psychology of it? Why do they... A lot of them, they say, have some mental, like they're depressed or something. That's why you become left-wing.
I think that's the thing.
There is. They've looked at that's the science.
Yeah.
Don't blame me.
We had someone on the other day who was talking about narcissism and the weird relationship between.
I think I heard that. That's probably where I got it from. Yeah, they're narcissists and they're virtue signalling, aren't they? But they'd never have a migrant live in their house, would they? And stuff like that.
It is people who are sort of bullied at school who've got a bone to pick with the rest of society.
Have you noticed they're not very good looking in the main? I mean, it's generalising, but if you look, they're obviously, I mean, it's not right, but they were probably bullied, weren't they?
Yeah. Although I wasn't exactly, an oil painting at school. I basically
but you blossomed, didn't you?
I had the braces, I had the glasses, I was
Yeah,
a
but
little
you're
bit
like,
fat.
you know, remember Kylie Minogue in Neighbours? She was the mechanic, and then suddenly she was, you know, and there was the other one. It's always the way, isn't it?
Yeah, I got to
It's the
university.
tomboys. If you'd have been born a few years later, you know, you'd have been given hormones and stuff.
Oh, mate, I would have done, because I was a bit of a
tomboy, yeah.
If you look at pictures of me from year 10, I look like the missing member of Hanson.
Well,
I actually look like I belong in a
they
boy
would have tried
band.
to, yeah, that's what would have happened, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
very
and
worrying, though,
With
really,
an older
isn't it?
brother, I kept being given all of his clothes to wear because we were a bit short on cash, so I'd sort of hand me